Chapter 3583. Very quickly, more than a dozen black-clothed people noiselessly scuttle out of the fog forest, blocking Di Mingju and the Star Wolf at the entrance of the cave. The leader of these black-clothed men was the man who had just spoken. He was tall and slender, wearing a purple robe, and his black hair reached his waist. His appearance could be considered handsome, but when he laughed, he gave off a feeling of femininity. Who else could it be but Mu Luyan, the priest of Luyan of the netherworld? Mu Luyan's gaze falls on Di Mingju. An uncontrollable fear and wariness flashed in his eyes. Then he laughed unscrupulously. "Emperor, I really didn't expect this. We meet again so soon." Di Mingju says indifferently, "What about Li Weiran?" "Who knows?" A look of disdain appeared on Mu Luyan's face. After so many years, this brat still can't get rid of his old habits of sneaking around and scheming in the dark. Selfish, greedy, insidious, heartless. If not for the fact that he is proficient in incantations and has some value to us, there is no way he would be qualified to stay in our organization. However, there's nothing we can do about it. As the saying goes, dragons give birth to dragons and phoenixes give birth to phoenixes. Someone like Di Beixian, who looks dignified on the surface, but is actually a treacherous and shameless person, can only have such a son. Star Wolf was enraged. "Shut up. If you dare to spout nonsense again, I'll pull out your tongue." "I'm babbling nonsense?" Mu Luyan couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Emperor, why don't you tell him what your relationship with Li Weiran is? What is his relationship with Di Beixian?" Back then, Di Beixian had his way with women everywhere in the three realms. That was something the entire cultivation continent knew. It was just that those children all had average talent and would die of old age before they reached 100 years of age. In the end, only that little bastard Li Weiran survived. Speaking of which, he should also be the successor of the polar domain. Mu Luyan looks at Di Mingju with a smile that isn't a smile. "Di Jun, no matter what, that little bastard is still your half-brother from a different mother. Shouldn't you take him back and give him back what he deserves?" Star Wolf was enraged. "Bullshit. Who was Li Weiran? Do you think you're fit to call me brother?" Mu Luyan didn't even look at Star Wolf. He only looks at Di Mingju with a mocking gaze. "I really asked a stupid question. The Arch-King was also Di Beixian's son, and he was also selfish, shameless, vicious, and heartless. He only cared about himself and the polar domain, but he couldn't see the suffering of the people of the world. How could the emperor bear to spit out the power that is already in his hands and return it to his brother?" Star Wolf was so angry that his eyes turned red. The anger in his chest was about to explode. This group of bastards, how dare they slander Jun Shang like this? In the immortal cultivation continent, the nightmare ghosts wreaked havoc. When was it not the Lord who risked his life to save tens of thousands of lives? How many things had he done for the common people? How many risks did he take? How many times had he been injured? However, he never boasted about his merits and achievements. But just because Jun Shang is low-key, these people can wantonly slander and insult Jun Shang? Star Wolf's chest heaved violently. They only hate that they don't have Han Ye's eloquence and Miss Jun's poisonous tongue, able to make them speechless. But for him to swallow this insult and humiliation, he absolutely can't do it. Thus, Star Wolf didn't say anything. He bellowed and unsheathed his long blade. Chapter 3584. He recklessly hacked at Mu Luyan. Mu Luyan's eyes were filled with mockery. A boorish fellow like Star Wolf, he did not place him in his eyes at all. With a wave of his hand, a black, stick-like magic treasure appeared in his hand. From the Xiuxian continent to the Yinwu continent, you can't carry any immortal tools other than your natal magic weapons. Even if it was a natal magic treasure, it would not be able to exert even 10% of its power in this desolate continent. However, the thin black rod that Mu Luyan took out actually emitted strands of black qi that wrapped around the Star Wolf. Dark prison zen, infernal flame. Mu Luyan looked at the Star Wolf, who was bound by the black gas and unable to move for a moment. His lips curled into a mocking smile. "I'll let you have a taste of the feeling of having your soul destroyed by the seamless fire." As soon as he finished speaking, a red light shone from the tip of the thin black stick, the dark Hellzen. But at this moment, Star Wolf's originally immobile hand suddenly lifted up. Then, a powerful energy burst out from the long saber and slashed at the Dark Hell Zen. Crack, crack, crack. The red light on the Dark Hell Zen instantly disappeared. The entire stick was actually frozen solid. Mu Yoyun's expression changed drastically, and he rolled to the side without thinking. At the critical moment, he dodged Star Wolf's fatal attack. However, there was a wound on his left shoulder, so deep that the bone could be seen. As the blood flowed out, it condensed into red ice crystals. Even the Dark Hell Zen in his hand fell to the ground. It floats in midair and falls into Di Mingju's hand. Mu Luyan clutches his shoulder, looking at Di Mingju in horror. Her mind once again recalled the despair and fear she felt when she was crushed by this man. You've already been hit by the infinite holy curse, yet you still have such strength. Yes, the Star Wolf was able to injure him just now. It's not that he got rid of the control of the Hell of Darkness Zen, but that Di Mingju was manipulating his every move from behind the scenes. This man didn't even need to do it himself. Mu Luyan was already powerless to resist. If he hadn't been hit by the infinite holy curse just now, they wouldn't even be qualified to be crushed to death by him like ants. Star Wolf cuts a sorry figure as he returns to Di Mingju's side. He almost can't raise his head to look at the Jun Shang that he revered. He's really too useless. Not only can he not protect Jun Shang at all, but he also always makes Jun Shang protect him. Among the 4 Imperial Guard commanders, he was the most useless. His talent was average, his brain wasn't good, and his mouth wasn't sharp either. Apart from causing trouble for Jun Shang, there's no use. The rims of Star Wolf's eyes were slightly moist, and his entire person had sunk into the depression of self-doubt. However, at this moment, a thin black stick was thrown into his arms. Di Mingju's cold and slightly impatient voice is heard. Your natal magic weapon doesn't suit you. I have already erased the divine soul imprint on the Dark Hell Zen. Can you refine this from now on? Star Wolf scrambles to take it, then dumbly stares at Di Mingju. Jun Shang snatched the Dark Prison Zen and gave it to him. He even purposely erased the divine soul imprint on it. Does Jun Shang not hate him and still have high hopes for him? At this moment, Xing Lang's tears almost flowed out. I only feel that being able to follow Jun Shang in this life is really the happiest thing. At the side, Mu Luyan is also so angry that he wants to cry. The Dark Hell Zen isn't an ordinary magic weapon. It can't correspond to the various magic weapons of the Xiaoxian continent. Chapter 3585. However, its value was incomparable to a normal, holy item. He communicated with the Yin and Yang domains, lingering between the darkness curse and the light holy light. It was one of the few weapons in the world that was suitable for Mu Luyan. After obtaining the Dark Hell Zen from his master, Mu Luyan had refined it for over 100 years before finally succeeding. Now that Di Mingju has easily and skillfully erased his soul imprint, it's tantamount to his 100 years of hard work being in vain. How could he not be angry? Mu Luyan slowly stood up, his eyes emitting intense killing intent. Generals, listen up. Today, no matter what price we have to pay, we must behead the polar domain's sovereign here. Di Mingju is dead. The polar domain has collapsed. From now on, the Xiaoxian continent is our world. No one will be able to stop us from lighting up every corner of the 3 realms. Now listen to my command. Release the poltergeist ghosts. The men in black in the valley answered Gauhi in unison. Yes, we will obey the priest's orders. What? Star Wolf's expression changed drastically. What did he just hear? Venomous ghosts. In the next moment, every black-robed man took out a black porcelain bottle. Then he bit the tip of his finger and dripped his blood into the bottle. Drops of blood dripped into the porcelain bottle. The faces of the black-robed men grew paler and paler, and their bodies became thinner and thinner. It was as if his flesh and blood were being sucked dry bit by bit. But even so, there was not a trace of fear or unwillingness on their faces. On the contrary, all of their eyes shone brilliantly, crazily and persistently, as if they were doing an incomparably sacred thing. Bang! After dripping the last drop of blood, the black-clothed man became emaciated, like a zombie wrapped in human skin on the outside of a skeleton. He couldn't hold on any longer and fell straight down, losing all signs of life. At the moment of his death, his sunken eyes were wide open, and the corners of his cracked lips curved into a beautiful and yearning smile. It looked extremely creepy and eerie. The black porcelain bottle in his hand began to vibrate violently. Then, ferocious-looking poltergeist ghosts crawled out of the porcelain vases. They bared their fangs and let out terrifying sounds as they began to search for fresh and delicious prey. One by one, the men in black fell to the ground as their flesh and blood were sucked dry. More and more venomous ghosts appeared in the valley. In the blink of an eye, this small area was filled to the brim. Star Wolf had already seen the scene of nightmare ghosts wreaking havoc, but right now, he only felt his scalp go numb, because the valley was too small. Furthermore, the entrance to the cave was blocked by a barrier. He and Junshang simply have no way to escape. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that these poltergeist ghosts were of very low levels, only at the first or second level. In front of the dense fog forest, Mu Luoyan's figure slowly became transparent. The smile at the corner of his mouth was filled with ridicule and mockery. "Emperor, all of you shall stay in this valley and experience the pain and despair of being slowly eaten and devoured by the poltergeist ghosts. To be able to die so easily in the mouths of the nightmare ghosts is truly a bargain for you. If possible, I really want you to personally taste the pain we suffered back then. Hehe, let's not meet again, my esteemed emperor." Piak. Dijun raised his hand. A black light flew out from his palm and lashed at Mu Luoyan, who was about to disappear, like a whip. A dash! Mu Luoyan let out a blood-curdling scream and fell heavily to the ground. Chapter 3586. The Black Whip doesn't seem to feel carefree enough. It slaps Mu Luoyan's body a few times. His flesh is lacerated, and he howls miserably again and again. This kind of pain can't be endured by willpower. Mu Luoyan considers himself a persevering person, but right now, he can't control his instinctive moans and screams. After the black whip has lashed Mu Luoyan enough, it flies high into the sky, gently shaking. The next moment, the whip turns into a black longsword. It flies towards the poltergeist ghosts in the valley. Crackle! Blue sparks of lightning explode in every corner of the valley from time to time. Every time the lightning flashes, a poltergeist's head falls to the ground. Originally, poltergeist ghosts won't necessarily die even if their heads are cut off. However, the poltergeist ghosts that are cut by the black longsword will burn with a blue flame. This flame burns very quickly. In just a moment, the huge poltergeist ghost turns into ashes, falling into the mud. Star Wolf is simply dumbfounded, stars in his eyes. He looks at Di Mingju, as if he's looking at a supreme god. Mu Luoyan, who has finally recovered from the pain, looks at this scene with an ashen face, not daring to believe it. How is this possible? How can this be? You've clearly been hit by the infinite holy curse. It should be difficult for you to even stand. How can you retain so much divine power? The last poltergeist ghost is burned to nothing by the blue flame. The black longsword flies back into Di Mingju's hand, slowly entering his body. Di Mingju looks at Mu Luoyan sneering. Who said that Ben Jun was hit by the infinite holy curse? I clearly saw the infinite holy curse being triggered, and your body was also branded with the power of the curse. Mu Luoyan's voice stops abruptly. He sees Di Mingju take out a piece of paper from his bosom, gently pinching it between his fingers, looking pensive. This piece of paper is actually a very small painting. The painting is of a ferocious ghost. But above the ghost, there are beautiful and colorful butterflies fluttering. Under their feet, there are blooming flowers. Because of the existence of butterflies and flowers, the originally ugly ghost seems to be a bit more gentle and kind. It was supposed to be a very ordinary painting. Mu Luoyan was stunned when he saw it, but he quickly realized something. His eyes widened as he screamed, "This is the infinite lesser light mantra? How is this possible? How could you possibly have the boundless lesser light mantra?" So that was how it was. So that's how it is. Only the immeasurable lesser radiance mantra and the great radiance mantra could counteract the effects of the immeasurable holy mantra. No wonder Di Mingju was clearly hit by the infinite holy curse, but wasn't injured at all. But even Li Weiran didn't know how to use the innumerable little light curse. So how did Di Mingju know? Where did you get this painting? Why is there still someone in this world who can use the infinite lesser light mantra? In fact, this question is also hovering in Di Mingju's mind. Regarding the curse, almost everyone in the Xiuxian continent kept it a secret. Just like the Shin musician was a taboo for everyone. Di Mingju also wants to know why Mayan's third senior brother, Chu Moli, already knew that Li Weiran and the others would use the infinite holy curse to deal with him. He even thoughtfully prepared the immeasurable lesser light incantation for him. Chu Moli, just who is he? But now isn't the time to look into this. Di Mingju puts away the paper and slowly walks towards Mu Luyan. Where is Li Weiran? Chapter 3587. Mu Luyan is in a trance right now. He shakes his head in horror, shouting that it's impossible. Then he laughs hysterically, as if he's gone mad. He raises his head to look at Di Mingju. Does Di Jun want to know what Li Weiran's plan is? Di Mingju looks down at him, not speaking. Actually, I also want to know. Mu Luyan reveals a strange smile. His face has wounds from the whip, badly mangled. With this smile, the wounds split open, making him look even more sinister and terrifying. I didn't like Li Weiran before, and I didn't like him. But this time, everything is as he predicted. Listening to the orders of Di Beishuan's illegitimate son makes me feel unspeakably disgusted. But in order to thoroughly kill you, Di Jun, today, I'm willing to listen to him once. Mu Luyan's neck is raised high, revealing his slender white neck stained with blood. Her voice, which was already somewhat feminine, suddenly became louder, like the ear-piercing sound effect of a boiling kettle. Li Weiran, I will use my life in exchange for the collapse of the polar domain, in exchange for my lord's unparalleled hegemony. If you dare deceive me, even if I descend to the 18th level of hell, I will definitely come back to take your life. Di Mingju's pupils suddenly contract. He sees Mu Luyan's body suddenly fly out like a cannonball. His hands and feet have long been dislocated and fractured from the whip strikes just now. He can't even stand up. So the way he flies out right now is extremely strange. His head is raised high. His hands and feet hang limply. The direction of his flight isn't towards Di Mingju or Star Wolf. Instead, it's towards the cave covered by the barrier. Bang! Mu Luyan hits the barrier with his head raised. His neck breaks in half on the spot. Blood splatters out. His eyes are wide open, and he slowly slides down the barrier in this twisted position. His cracked lips softly murmur, Master, Luyan can no longer follow you. May you live for 10,000 autumns and 10,000 generations. The holy light is eternal. Mu Luyan falls to the ground and dies. A nostalgic and gentle smile condenses on his mangled face, and finally disappears along with the flowing blood. Star Wolf is a bit confused by this turn of events. What is this guy doing? Do you want to die? But Di Mingju's complexion greatly changes. He grabs the Star Wolf and directly throws him into the dense fog forest. But he himself did not leave. That was because he knew that when Mu Luyan's blood splashed onto the barrier, he was already unable to leave. The transparent barrier began to tremble violently. From the ground, black tentacles stretch out one after another, wrapping around Di Mingju's feet. This was clearly the first time he had seen this scene, but it was so familiar. It was as if he had seen such a scene many, many years ago. The moment he's entangled by these tentacles, Di Mingju feels the strength in his body being sucked clean. His mind also became muddled and heavy. He was in a trance, not knowing what day it was and where he was. Di Mingju, are you alright? Don't scare me. Di Mingju raises his head with difficulty. What he sees is a peerlessly beautiful face and peach blossom eyes brimming with concern and worry. Yin Yan. The moment he sees the girl, Di Mingju feels as if his heart, which has always been tormented in a pot of oil, has fallen back to earth, becoming soft and tranquil. But very quickly, Di Mingju responds. Why did you come to the Yimwu continent? It's so dangerous here. Who let you come? Nonsense. Chapter 3588. What Yimwu continent? The girl in front of him blinks, a puzzled look on her face. Di Mingju, have you become muddled from sleep? Saying so, Her small jade-like hand caresses Di Mingju's forehead. You don't have a fever. Why are you talking nonsense? Suddenly, the young girl's eyes narrowed, revealing a dangerous expression. Don't tell me you don't want to marry me. So you're pretending to be sick on the eve of our wedding? Get married? Di Mingju repeats these two words in a daze. Then his blurry vision gradually became clear. Everything around him came into view. This is Polar Domain's soaring sky hall? How could this be? He was clearly in the Yinwu continent just now. Suddenly, Di Mingju's train of thought stagnates. Was he really in the Yinwu continent before? But why would he go to the Yinwu continent? Di Mingju. Mayan couldn't help but push him. What's wrong with you? You've been weird all day today. Don't tell me it's like what Bai Xie said, premarital phobia? She snorted coldly. If you really don't want to, then cancel tomorrow's wedding. I'll leave the polar domain immediately. No. Di Mingju instinctively lets out a low shout, reaching out to pull the person into his embrace. You're not allowed to go anywhere other than by Benjun's side. The girl in his arms smiled, her brows relaxed, and she looked as beautiful as the morning sun. It makes Di Mingju's heart feel like it's soaked in soft honey water, sweet and warm. Sweeping his gaze around, Di Mingju discovers that the layout of High Sky Hall is completely different from before. Festive red silk was hung everywhere, and double happiness was pasted on the door. Extending his divine sense, he could see that the entire polar domain was already decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and it was extraordinarily lively. Everyone's faces were brimming with smiles as they waited for their ruler to marry his beloved divine empress. Mu Yan, happily left to try on her wedding clothes. The smile on Di Mingju's face slowly dissipates, turning into absent-mindedness and perplexity. Was he really going to marry Mayan? But why did it all feel like a dream? He was still there earlier. Wait a minute, what was he doing just now? Why couldn't he remember anything? Soon the next day arrived. The sky was clear, and the wind was gentle. Di Mingju rarely changes out of his black brocade robe and puts on a fiery red bridegroom outfit. Everything around him seemed to be speeding up. In a hazy state of unease, Di Mingju arrives at the center of the auditorium. In front of him was a woman wearing a phoenix coronet and a red cape. She was extremely beautiful and captivating. Di Mingju can barely hear the sound of Elder Chang reciting the prayer. He stared unblinkingly at the woman in front of him. Amidst the joyous atmosphere, an unspeakable uneasiness and pain flowed through his heart. Would Mayan really belong to him from now on, and become his wife? Why did it feel so unreal when the beautiful woman was right in front of him, and the blessing and oath was ringing in his ears? June Mayan, Di Mingju, you can't get married? At this moment, a man's voice came from outside the Lingxiao Hall. Everyone turned to look at the door. A handsome young man in a snow-white robe was holding the hand of a little baby carved from jade as he slowly walked into the hall. Li Weiran. Han Yi angrily rebuked. Today is my polar domain's sovereign emperor's wedding day. Who let you come in and make trouble? Someone come, hurry up and drive him out. The white-clothed young man had a pair of ice-blue eyes that were almost exactly the same as Di Mingju's. Chapter 3589. Who else could it be other than Li Weiran? The child he was holding had an extremely handsome appearance. His skin was like jade, and he looked like a fairy. What was most surprising was that his pupils were also ice blue. Her appearance is 60 to 70% similar to June Mayan's. Little treasure. The moment she saw the child, Mu Yan immediately tore off the phoenix coronet and rushed over, holding him in her arms. Xiaobao, where have you been? Don't you know that your mother was very worried about you? Xiaobao struggled out of Mu Yan's embrace and reached out to grab Li Weiran's hand. In a childish voice he said, Xiaobao is with Daddy. Mother, Father and I have come to pick you up. Mu Yan's face is full of bewilderment. She promptly pulls Xiaobao to Di Mingju's side. Xiaobao, this is your father. No. Xiaobao bit her lip and said sadly but firmly, I already know that he is not related to me by blood. He is not my biological father. Xiaobao wants to be with mother and father. The three of us will never be separated for the rest of our lives. Li Weiran also walked up and grabbed Mu Yan's hand. He said hoarsely, Mu Yan, I let you down in the past. I didn't look for you all these years, and caused you to suffer a lot. But now I already know that Xiaobao is my child. And I've never liked another woman as much as I like you. Can you give me a chance to make up for my past mistakes? And let me take care of you and your mother in the future? Mu Yan's face revealed a struggling expression. Li Weiran continued. That year in the cave, we were together by a freak combination of factors. But all these years, I've never forgotten you. Don't you miss that one night of ecstasy? I don't believe that you don't have any feelings for your first man. What's more, Xiaobao is our child in the end, and Dimingju and I have an irreconcilable enmity. Can you guarantee that he will love Xiaobao as his own flesh and blood forever? Even if he could do it. What about the others from the polar domain? Can they turn a blind eye to Xiaobao's past and truly support him as the successor of the polar domain? These words make Dimingju's heart suddenly ache. He subconsciously reached out and grabbed Mu Yan's hand, murmuring in a low voice, Mu Yan, don't go, don't leave me. Li Weiran also grabbed Mu Yan's other hand. Mu Yan, even if it's for Xiaobao, you will still be with me, right? Because you know very well that only by marrying me can you give Lil Bao a true and complete family. I will also use the rest of my life to treat you well, spoil you, love you, let you forget Dimingju, and truly become my wife. Mu Yan looked down at the boy's eyes, which were filled with anticipation and anxiety. She finally gritted her teeth and shook off Dimingju's hand. Resolutely, she stood beside Li Weiran, tears falling from her eyes. I'm sorry, Dimingju. I want to give little Bao a complete family. Plus, Li Weiran is my first man and the father of my child. I love you, but I can't choose you. After saying that, she grabbed Li Weiran and Xiaobao's hands without any reluctance to leave, turned around and left. His heart felt like it was being ruthlessly cut by a blunt knife. It was as if he was tied up by thorns and strangled tightly. It was so painful that he could hardly breathe. Dimingju had already realized that something was wrong. This was a dream. Chapter 3590. The Mu Yan and Xiaobao, in this dream, no matter how similar they pretend to be, are still different from the women he loves. He already knew. He lingered in this dream, because he still couldn't find a way to free himself. But even if he already knew, seeing Mu Yan take Li Weiran's hand and leave, it still makes his heart ache, as if it's going to break apart. It's like the fear hidden in the bottom of his heart has been magnified countless times in an instant. It's telling him that no matter how much he struggles, he can't free himself. Could it be that he really can't keep Mu Yan? No. No one can take Mu Yan away from him. He can ignore everything in the world. But Mu Yan is his only obsession in this life. Energy that can destroy the heavens and exterminate the earth overflows from his body. Around his trembling body, there's a tumultuous gale and huge waves. All the illusions around him begin to shatter, annihilated in the vortex. Dimingju doesn't notice that a black mark has appeared on his forehead. This mark is very strange. It seems to be the opposite of the Li Fire bloodline. It also seems to be a seal with complicated runes, firmly locking something. And now, under the impact of Dimingju's intense emotions, the seal began to wobble and emit a flickering light. It seems like it could break at any time. But at this moment, a black painting shoots in from the outside like lightning. As Dimingju's emotions surge, it instantly enters his body. Yinwu Continent, a nameless valley. Li Weiran looks at the deathly pale man in front of him, the corners of his mouth curling up in ridicule. He slowly walks along the invisible barrier in front of the cave. As he walks, his slender fingers gently draw across the barrier. Some strange runes immediately appear in the air. Li Weiran chuckles. I also inadvertently discovered that there's such an interesting place in the Yinwu Continent. Cursed land. Moreover, it's a cursed land that's specifically aimed at the inheritors of the Li Fire bloodline. I don't know who left it here, but it's like it's prepared for the people of the Polar Domain's imperial family a tomb. If there wasn't this cursed land as an aid, and if that idiot Mu Luyan sacrificed his life to activate the dark curse of the cursed land, it really wouldn't be that easy for me to kill you today. Saying so, he raises his eyes to look at Dimingju. His ice blue eyes were bottomless, but the smile on his face became more and more unbridled. Does the curse of 1,000 cuts feel good? I have been preparing this incantation talisman for you for over 100 years. Di Mingju's current appearance is truly indescribably distressed. Every inch of skin on his body was cracking open and healing quickly. It was like death by 1,000 cuts over and over again. And the same death by 1,000 cuts was still happening in his internal organs. This kind of pain was definitely not something an ordinary person could endure. But Di Mingju's complexion is deathly pale. His expression doesn't even show any abnormalities. The way he looked at Li Weiran was still so condescending. It was as if he was looking at a piece of trash that he didn't even care about. He didn't even want to talk to him. The ethereal spirit ring on the ring finger of his left hand flashed. But it was quickly sealed by Di Mingju, and didn't show the slightest abnormality in the meantime. But in reality, the curse of 1,000 cuts in his body was wreaking havoc, because it lacked the divine power to resist and suppress it. Li Weiran was obviously angered by his attitude. Chapter 3591. But the angrier he got, the brighter the smile on his face. A pair of ice-blue pupils are faintly tinged with a bit of scarlet. Di Mingju, do you know what your mother Bai Shengwei did to me back then? Today, I will return all the pain he inflicted on me back then to you. Di Mingju's complexion suddenly sinks. No matter how Mu Luyan insulted Di Beixian, he acted as if nothing had happened. It was as if Di Beixian wasn't his father at all, but an insignificant stranger. But now, Li Weiran mentioned Bai Shengwei. The killing intent in Di Mingju's eyes spreads like ice all of a sudden. The black longsword flew out from his palm and slashed down viciously at Li Weiran. However, he was too weak now. Even this life-bond sword seemed to have lost its support and became extremely weak. Li Weiran easily dodged the attack, and the smile on his face became even wider. Why did you get angry when I mentioned Bai Shengwei? Did I say something wrong? Back then, pausing for a moment, Li Weiran's face revealed a trace of malevolent hatred. Li Qianqian is indeed a mistress, and is not worthy of sympathy, but what did I do wrong as a child? Just because they discovered that I might awaken my Li Fire bloodline, and were afraid that I would threaten your status as the successor of the polar domain, they ordered people to cripple my Dantian spirit root, and sold me to the dirtiest place in the world. Ha ha ha, this is the polar domain divine queen, that everyone praises as virtuous and kind-hearted? Bah! She's even more disgusting and evil than Di Beixian. She should be cursed by everyone and die a horrible death. Shut up! Di Mingju shouted, interrupting Li Weiran's words. There was a hint of suspicion in his eyes. Then he said in a deep voice, Mother would never do such things. Di Mingju has always known that Di Beixian is a playboy by nature, and has many lovers and illegitimate children outside. Some of these lovers followed him willingly. Some were even deceived by him, and had no choice but to give themselves to him. And Di Mingju's mother Bai Shengwei has never loved Di Beixian. Their marriage was a political marriage, but it was also a result of Di Beixian's passionate pursuit of the Bai family. Bai Shengwei had no choice but to marry into the polar domain imperial dynasty for the Bai family. However, she had never truly loved Di Beixian. Therefore, she had never asked about what he had done outside, and only felt disgusted and disgusted. She puts all her thoughts on nurturing and loving Di Mingju. However, an accident several hundred years ago had caused Bai Shengwei to be heavily injured. For many years after that, Bai Shengwei was always bedridden. She could no longer shield her only child from the wind and rain. During that period of time, Di Mingju suffered a lot and quickly grew into a king who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Di Beixian. However, just when he thought that he could take good care of Bai Shengwei, Bai Shengwei suddenly passed away. Di Beixian also disappeared without a trace. Even the soul lamp he left in the polar domain was extinguished. Everyone said that Di Beixian was dead. The entire polar domain's imperial family only has Di Mingju, who has just stepped into the realm of the immortal king. At that time, everyone thought that the polar domain would decline and be unable to recover from this setback, withdrawing from the tripartite status of the nether realm and the demon race. But who could have known that Di Mingju's strength would advance to the peak of venerable immortal in just a few short years, pushing the polar domain all the way to the peak? It could even suppress the nether realm and the demon race. Now he had become the only immortal emperor in the Xiaoxian continent. Chapter 3592. But only Di Mingju knew how much guilt and longing he felt. Guilt that he couldn't become stronger faster and protect his mother. That way his mother wouldn't have died. In Di Mingju's impression, Bai Shengwei was an almost perfect woman, kind, gentle, patient, and had her own determination and perseverance. So no matter what, he wouldn't believe that Bai Shengwei would treat Li Weiran like that. But Li Weiran's expression when he said these words, and his aura fluctuated intensely. All of these meant that what he said was true. Di Mingju's words made Li Weiran's eyes redden even more, and the smile on his face became even more venomous and hateful. Di Mingju, did you think that I schemed step by step, plotted for hundreds of years, and put you in this situation of death, just to listen to your explanation, or to make you believe me? No. I just wanted Bai Shengwei, who was underground, to see with her own eyes what kind of miserable ending the son she nurtured with so much effort would fall into. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Weiran formed a seal with both hands. In a split second, the thousand cuts curse that had been implanted in Di Mingju's body began to wreak havoc. Di Mingju, who had been holding back all this time, finally couldn't help but let out a grunt. Fresh blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. A burnt piece of paper fell from his arms, turning into ash and disappearing. Li Weiran looked at the paper and sneered. Did you think that I would completely believe Chu Emoli and not take any precautions? No, in this world, I won't believe anyone. I only believe in myself. Di Mingju, you won't be able to escape today. Di Mingju's entire body leaned against the invisible barrier of the cave, tottering, almost unable to stand. His clothes were completely soaked in blood from the wounds that had opened up all over his body. But even in such a miserable and hopeless situation, Di Mingju's expression was still cold and indifferent. His long eyelashes hung down, covering the dark light in his eyes. At this time, a melodious zither sound came from the fog forest. Di Mingju and Li Weiran's pupils shrank at almost the same time, and they abruptly turned their heads to look. Then, they saw a sword whistling through the forest. It directly struck Li Weiran's hand. Bang! The violent impact caused Li Weiran's entire body to fly several meters away. His hand was also cut by the sharp blade, and blood splattered everywhere. For a moment, Li Weiran felt as though the wound was on his heart. The pain seeped into his heart and lungs, causing the blood in his body to turn cold bit by bit. A figure rushes out of the forest, and in the blink of an eye, it's already at Di Mingju's side. Mu Yan supports the man's teetering body, feeling the cold and sticky touch of his body. His heart contracted fiercely, and the hand that was taking his pulse couldn't help but tremble. Di Mingju, what's going on? Why did you come to the Yinwu continent, and even make yourself look like this? Although she said those words with resentment, the worry and heartache in the girl's eyes almost overflowed. Di Mingju feels as if he stepped into a glacier in a dream. His frozen and numb heart slowly warms up. Unknowingly, his eyes were tainted with a bone-piercing gentleness. In this world, he would only show his gentleness to this woman in front of him. But it was not over yet. He had not gotten the answer he wanted. Di Mingju grabbed Mayan's wrist with a backhand, his ice-cold fingers firmly clasping her like a pair of iron pincers. Chapter 3593. Yin Yan, don't you find this place familiar? Mayan stares blankly and looks around. In an instant, he felt a buzzing in his head, and everything in the world seemed to have disappeared. All that was left was the cave in front of her that had once terrified her, confused her, and left her in a trance. She thought that she had lived two lives. So many years had passed, and she had long forgotten everything. But at this moment, he realized that some things were like soul imprints. As long as it happened, it would never be forgotten. Mayan's line of sight falls on Di Mingju's face. Gritting her teeth, she enunciates each word. Why are you here? How did you know about this place? Di Mingju looks at her deathly pale complexion in a split second, and only feels a burst of pain in his heart. He quickly reached out and pulled her into his embrace. Yin Yan, I don't care about your past, and I don't care who Xiao Bao's biological father is. He didn't finish his sentence. But Mu Yan understood. Di Mingju has always been brooding over Xiao Bao's biological father. This time, Li Weiran must have said something to him. This caused him to become hot-headed and step into Li Weiran's trap in the Yinwu continent. For Mu Yan, everything that happened back then was like a wound that had already scabbed over. Of course, she didn't want anyone to investigate. That was tantamount to tearing open a bloody wound. Especially when the one who tore it apart was Di Mingju. In this world, what Mayan doesn't want the most is for Di Mingju to know about this past. She wants to get angry, but looking at Di Mingju's miserable appearance, she only feels distressed. You hurt yourself so badly just for this? Are you an idiot? Mu Yan takes out the Tian Emochin and starts playing. The sound of the zither rises, and pure energy envelopes Di Mingju, stopping the thousands of cuts on his body for a moment. But a curse was a curse after all. It's not something that the healing skills of today's Shin musicians can match. Therefore, the art's essence yellow skill falls on Di Mingju. His wounds only healed for a moment before they burst open again. Blood splatters everywhere. The pain of his body being dismembered inch by inch makes Di Mingju's complexion deathly pale. His body trembling uncontrollably. Di Mingju, how are you? Mayan hugs his tottering body, no longer able to keep her voice calm. This is the first time that she feels so panicked when Di Mingju is by her side. Although she doesn't admit it verbally, in Mayan's eyes, Di Mingju is powerful and omnipotent. As long as he was by her side, she could put down all her defenses and rely on him with peace of mind. But at this very moment Mu Yan knows. The man she loved was not omnipotent. He would also be injured, he would also be riddled with holes, and he would also die. The word death popped up in his mind. Mayan feels that she can hardly breathe, and hot tears can't stop falling from her eyes. Di Mingju grabs her hand, his eyes burning, his voice hoarse. If the person who hurt me was Xiao Bao's biological father, which side would you stand on? Will you allow me to kill him? Mu Yan, who was originally crying, stares blankly, suspecting that she had misheard. However, the man looked into her eyes with a burning gaze, as well as the nervousness, apprehension, jealousy, and determination that could not be concealed no matter what, made Mu Yan realize that he was not joking. Di Mingju, what nonsense are you talking about? Chapter 3594. Mayan grits her teeth. Since you're standing here, you should be clear that I wasn't willing at that time. I hate that dog more than I hate that man. How could I protect him? Di Mingju, can't you trust me a little more? My love for you isn't any less than your love for me. Before Mayan could finish her words, she's already being embraced into an embrace filled with the smell of blood. Di Mingju's hands tightly clasps her, as if he wants to integrate her deeply into his own flesh and blood. At this moment, a warm and bright smile like that of a child blooms on that 10,000-year-old iceberg face. Even though the tip of his nose is filled with a pungent smell, the man's body is slightly trembling because of the pain. But Mayan still can't help but let out a long sigh, smiling as she returns his embrace. With Di Mingju here, she suddenly feels that the unbearable past is no longer unforgettable, painful, and humiliating. Di Mingju suddenly releases her at this time. He turns to look at Li Weiran sneering. Now you can go die. Crackle. As he speaks, the black sword that was originally floating softly in the air suddenly straightens. The sword emits a powerful pressure that makes the heaven and earth tremble. Li Weiran's complexion is as cold as frost, his eyes as dark as water, because he suddenly realizes Di Mingju wasn't forced into a desperate situation by him before. Everything was just a pretense by this man. His only purpose is to let Mayan see him hurt her with her own eyes. He wants Jun Mayan to personally say, I can kill him. In this way, even if he really is Xiao Bao's biological father, being killed by Di Mingju under these circumstances, it's impossible for Mayan to hate him. Hehe, this man is really worthy of being the son of Di Beixian, and Bai Xingwei. Ruthless to others, ruthless enough to himself. In order to completely possess Mayan, he's even willing to risk his own life. The black sword in the air slashes down, crackle and crackle as lightning strikes the valley floor. With a loud bang, a large hole is smashed open. Li Weiran barely dodges, but his blood still churns, and he spits out a mouthful of blood. The second sword comes like a shadow. This time, it's no longer lightning but bone-chilling frost. The speed of each sword was so fast that it didn't give him any time to react. Li Weiran's mind raced as he looked at Mu Yan and shouted, "Jun Mu Yan, do you really want Di Mingju to kill me? Even if I'm Xiaobao's biological father?" "What?" Mu Yan was shocked and looked at Li Weiran in disbelief. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the pair of icy blue eyes that were almost identical to Xiaobao's. Li Weiran was Xiaobao's biological father? The man I met in the cave was him? No. Impossible. Boom. When the second sword landed, Li Weiran dashed forward. It's unknown when a cursed talisman appeared in his hand, and he slaps it on Di Mingju's body. Now that Di Mingju has the curse of 1,000 cuts on him, his body is so weak that even a child can be knocked down. Seeing Li Weiran's attack coming towards him, he had no way of dodging. But Mu Yan is by Di Mingju's side. The 7 subordinate swords were unsheathed, whistling through the air as they blocked Li Weiran's movements. On the floating island and the Xiuzhen continent, Mu Yan's strength was naturally far from Li Weiran's. But this is the Yimwu continent. It's the home field of Mu Yan, who possesses internal force. Especially in the past few years, her internal force has become more and more mellow and powerful. It has long surpassed the pre-celestial stage. Chapter 3595. On this continent, even if Di Mingju doesn't use his divine power, he would only have a 50-50 chance of winning against her. Therefore, Li Weiran's attack is firmly blocked by her 7 absolute swords, unable to advance an inch. This pause also allows Di Mingju to control his natal sword to catch up to Li Weiran. Whoosh! The sword slashes down, but there is no intestines piercing, no head falling to the ground. But a layer of frost condenses from the soles of Li Weiran's feet, gradually spreading to the top of his head. When this frost completely covers Li Weiran, it will be the moment of his death. Li Weiran's hands are already frozen, so he simply gives up resisting. A careless smile hangs on his slightly pale lips. "Mu Yan, do you really want Di Mingju to kill me?" Di Mingju suddenly grabs Mu Yan's hand, tightly clenching it. A low, hoarse voice rings in Mu Yan's ears. "Yin Yan, will you blame me for killing him?" Mu Yan knits her brows tightly, remaining silent, because Qi Huang in the space is urgently telling her, if that bastard Li Weiran is really Xiaobao's biological father, you must not let Di Mingju kill him, otherwise Xiaobao will be in danger. "What do you mean?" Mu Yan quickly asks with her divine sense. "Qi Huang, let's not talk about the fact that the Li Fire bloodline needs the protection of the elders. There is still a solution. The most important thing is that Xiaobao's immortal physique is still unstable, and he has a condition of blood empathy. Once the inheritor of the bloodline dies, Xiaobao's immortal physique will also collapse. At that time, you won't even have a place to cry." Seeing that Mu Yan is silent for a long time, Di Mingju's heart sinks a little. There is only one voice echoing in his mind. She really can't bear to. In her heart, there is still this man. But the more it is like this, the more Di Mingju can't bear it. The more he wants Li Weiran to disappear from Mu Yan's sight forever. Mu Yan takes a deep breath and holds the man's hand. "Di Mingju, can you not kill Li Weiran first? I want to confirm if he is Xiaobao's biological father." And if it is confirmed, Di Mingju enunciates each word. "If it is confirmed, will you let me kill him?" Mayan shakes her head. "He can't die for the time being, Xiaobao." Di Mingju only feels a buzzing sound in his head. He almost couldn't hear the rest of Mayan's words. His body felt like it had been thrown into ice water. His limbs, bones, and even his heart felt cold and numb. "Di Mingju, did you hear that? Li Weiran can't die yet. Hurry up and stop the frost." Di Mingju suddenly reaches out and clasps her waist, firmly pulling her into his embrace. His other hand was pressed against the back of her neck. His eyes were red as if he was possessed. "Junmayan, tell me, do you really love me? Why are you still protecting this man when he wants to kill me? Will you do as he wishes and abandon me if he asks you to leave with him, as Xiaobao's biological father one day?" Di Mingju suddenly lowers his head, seizing her lips. He bit down fiercely, as if he had gone mad. Mayan's body can't help but tremble from the pain. He desperately wants to retreat from Di Mingju. But because of her resistance, Di Mingju's actions become more and more vicious and ruthless. Hidden behind the viciousness and ruthlessness is the uneasiness, fear, and deep love that has been accumulated for a long time. Mayan's heart softens to an unspeakable degree. Helpless and pitiful, this man, she doesn't know what he's imagining again. Chapter 3596. He didn't even listen to what people were saying. Muyan doesn't resist. Instead, she wraps her arms around Di Mingju's neck and gently responds. Their auras gradually harmonized. The ruthlessness and killing intent that pervaded the valley disappeared, without a trace, under the lingering affection. As her vision is blurred, Mayan can vaguely see that in the center of Di Mingju's forehead, there's a peculiar pattern that flashes and disappears. What is this? Why did she feel like she had seen it somewhere before? Just as he was thinking, the ground beneath his feet suddenly shook violently. The entire space in the valley began to distort. What's going on? Muyan promptly pushes Di Mingju away and looks around. There was a crackling sound in the air. The invisible barrier actually broke apart inch by inch. Then, these barriers formed a vortex and began to devour everything around them. Muyan had previously felt that the valley that she had mistakenly entered was not simple, and the man in the cave was even more so. Otherwise, she would have been able to find the entrance to the cave no matter how hard she tried. And Xiaobao wouldn't have the extremely rare immortal physique in the world. But it's only now that she's experienced how strange a cave in the Yinwu continent can be. Because the cave had disappeared. After explaining the devouring of the vortex, the distortion of space, and the quaking of the earth, the cave had completely disappeared before their eyes, not even leaving a trace behind. The entrance of the cave had turned into a vast plain. What the hell is going on? As soon as Muyan asks, she feels a weight on her body. Di Mingju has already fainted on top of her. The frost that was about to freeze Li Weiran's entire body also stopped spreading, stopping at his neck. It was just that the frost was too strong. Even if Li Weiran's face wasn't covered in frost, it was still covered in a thick layer of white frost. Li Weiran had already fainted due to the low temperature of his body. Mayan lets out a long sigh and hangs Di Mingju's entire body on her body. She then grabs Li Weiran's collar and calls out to her omnipotent third brother. No one noticed that in Di Mingju's sleeve, a bamboo tube emitted a sizzling sound, and fire-like runes appeared on it. Then it slowly dissipated. A crack visible to the naked eye appeared on the originally sealed bamboo tube. Continent of Cultivators, Liberty City. My lord, you're awake? Seeing Di Mingju open his eyes, Xinglang simply wants to cry with joy. Elder Chang, quickly come over and look after Jun Shang. I'll go invite Miss June. As soon as Di Mingju opens his eyes, he sees Xinglang's back disappearing at the door. He frowned and sat up with Elder Chang's help. Elder Chang's eyes were filled with worry. Lord, how are you feeling? Do your internal organs still hurt? The curse of 1,000 cuts in your body has been dispelled with the god water that Little Nine gave you. However, Little Nine is not proficient in using incantations after all, so I'm afraid that it hasn't been completely removed. Why don't I ask Third Young Master Chu to take a look at it for you? But Di Mingju doesn't answer. His gaze swept through every corner of the house, but he did not see any familiar figures. His heart sinks a little. What about Mayan? Elder Chang looked hesitant. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Di Mingju's hands suddenly clench into fists. Speak. Miss June, she is currently treating Li Weiran. Bang! Di Mingju abruptly stood up. He didn't even bother to put on his coat as he walked straight out. Chapter 3597. Jun Shang, your injuries haven't healed yet. Elder Chang hurriedly chased after him. As he ran, he shouted anxiously, Jun Shang, there's something I must tell you first. However, Di Mingju's speed is too fast. Even if he was injured, Elder Chang would not be able to catch up to him. In the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared. Elder Chang let out a long sigh and glanced at the room where Xiaobao was. He gritted his teeth and chased after Xiaobao. In the torture room, Mu Yan stops playing the zither. The frost that froze Li Wei's internal organs was finally expelled by her. The injury caused by Di Mingju's natal sword, how could it be casually healed? At this time, Mayan only feels that the spiritual power in her body has been completely consumed. A thin layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. His hands and feet felt weak. She let out a long sigh of relief, then couldn't help but grit her teeth. Qi Huang, you better make sure that I didn't save them for nothing. Otherwise, I'll definitely let you enjoy the long-awaited itchy meat set meal. Mayan doesn't even have the time to watch over the injured and unconscious Di Mingju, as she rushes over to treat Li Weiran. It was because Qi Huang said that Li Weiran might be dying soon. If he really was Xiaobao's biological father, he didn't save him directly. That would be equivalent to watching Xiaobao die. Although they had yet to confirm the relationship between Li Weiran and Xiaobao, although the probability was only 1 in 1,000. But when it comes to Xiaobao's safety, Mayan doesn't dare to gamble at all. Qi Huang shuddered at first, then he snorted coldly and said indifferently, "What does that have to do with me? I'm just telling you the truth. If you want to settle scores, you should look for Li Weiran." As he spoke, he said excitedly, "Didn't you say that if you saw that dog, you would castrate him more than a man? Anyway, castration won't affect Xiaobao. I think we can do it now." The corner of Mayan's mouth twitches, but she remembers what he did to Di Mingju. His peach blossom eyes couldn't help but be filled with coldness. He could escape death, but he couldn't escape punishment. She suddenly felt that Qi Huang's suggestion was pretty good. 7 Brilliants excitedly went to the space warehouse to find a suitable sharp dagger. Mu Yan frowned as she looked at the unconscious Li Weiran. She couldn't help but get closer. The vague silhouette he had seen in the cave years ago appeared in his mind. Indeed, his eyes were ice blue. However, he always felt that he wasn't the same person as Li Weiran. This part of her memory was very vague, as if it had been forcibly erased. But that feeling that couldn't be described with words wouldn't lie. Piak! A hand suddenly clasps Mayan's wrist, and she is suddenly pulled close to it. Li Weiran's hoarse voice rang in her ear. "You're so close. Are you trying to sneak an attack on me?" The girl bent down, her long hair hanging down, her eyebrows as beautiful as a painting. The smiling young man's eyes were as gentle as water. Their bodies were so close that it seemed like they would hug each other in the next moment. This is what Di Mingju sees when he enters the room. He clenched his fists so tightly that his fingernails dug deep into his palms. He didn't even feel it when his fingernails pierced his flesh. The uneasiness, fear, and jealousy that had been slightly appeased by Mayan, at this moment, it was like a prairie fire, burning every inch of his flesh and blood. It made him want to destroy everything around him. Mu Yan was his. No one could take it away. So what if he was Xiaobao's biological father? So what if Mayan still had feelings for him? Chapter 3598. He clearly knows that this idea is vicious and cruel. But Di Mingju is unable to restrain the growth of malice at the bottom of his heart. The black seal on his forehead was faintly discernible. It was as if it was absorbing his surging negative emotions. However, at this moment, a paw sound came from his sleeve. Di Mingju absent-mindedly lowers his head, taking something out of his sleeve. It was a bamboo tube that had been split in half. A piece of paper fell out. The paper was rolled into a cylinder. Under the control of Di Mingju's spiritual awareness, the paper slowly unfolds, revealing the words belonging to defeating armies. "Lord, please take note. This subordinate is going to the Yanwu continent to investigate some matters. This trip may be fraught with death and danger. That was why he left the seal of the Dhamma as a precaution. This subordinate is investigating only one matter. 10 years ago, Jun Shang was seriously injured and went into seclusion. He was transported to a cave in the Yanwu continent, unable to escape for several years. After returning to the polar domain, Jun Shang lost all of his memories. He didn't even know that he had been to the Yanwu continent. He even got to know a woman there, and the two of them stayed alone in the cave for several days. This subordinate suspects that the woman is Miss Jun Mayan, and Miss Jun's only son Jun Machan is Jun Shang's biological son. If this subordinate is unable to return safely, This letter will be delivered to Jun Shang to assist you in investigating the truth of that year. Pajun respectfully. Di Mingju stares blankly at the paper in his hand, his entire person dumbfounded. All the blood in his body suddenly rushed to his head at this moment, exploding and buzzing in his ears. The words on the paper also became blurred. It was as if countless brilliant fireworks were blooming in front of him. Defeating armies, what is he saying? He had been to the Yinwu continent? Xiaobao is his biological son? Is this true? Di Mingju's hand holding the paper can't help but tremble. He did not dare to believe defeating armies' message. But the heart in his chest was beating wildly because of jealousy, desire and shock. He recalled everything that had happened in the valley. That familiar feeling. There was also the shadow of the girl that appeared intermittently in his memories. Could it be that everything was real? Xiaobao is his son. He Di Mingju and Junmayan's biological son? Di Mingju. Di Mingju. The anxious voice calls back Di Mingju's scattered emotions. He abruptly came back to his senses and looked at the peerlessly beautiful face right in front of him. His heart pounded wildly again. Mu. Yan. A dry voice spits out from between his lips and teeth. For the first time Jun Shang Darren, who has always been confident and aloof, feels helpless and nervous. He opened his mouth to ask something, but no words came out. Mu Yan sighs, reaches out to pinch his face, and says helplessly, "Jealous again. I already said that I won't let you kill Li Weiran not because he might be Lil Bao's biological father, but because Lil Bao's biological father cannot die. Otherwise he will be in danger." Di Mingju. What danger? He kept repeating the same words in his mind. Li Weiran is just a liar. He is not Xiaobao's biological father, I am. Mu Yan tells him about the mythic fire bloodline, and Xiaobao's high fever and coma, because of the bloodline empathy. Di Mingju asks how long Xiaobao has been unconscious, and he only feels mixed feelings in his heart. It was hard to tell if he was more ecstatic or guilty. At this very moment, Di Mingju is even more certain that Xiaobao is his son, his and Mu Yan's son. There were obviously so many signs before. Why didn't he notice anything at all? Chapter 3599. Mu Yan sees that Di Mingju is in a trance, like a fool. He felt that she might still mind. Therefore, he decided to end the battle quickly. Mu Yan walked towards Li Weiran and raised her left hand. A piece of red jade fell from his hand, waving in front of Li Weiran's eyes. Standing not too far away, Di Mingju's pupils abruptly shrink. He almost couldn't help but cry out. Wasn't this the vermilion jade that he always wore? It's just that when she made a bet with Xiaobao in the Yinwu continent, she saw that Xiaobao really longed for this vermilion jade, so she gave it to him. Why is this vermilion jade in Mu Yan's hands? Mu Yan did not notice the change in Di Mingju's expression. She looked down at Li Weiran and coldly asked, "Do you recognize this piece of jade?" Li Weiran blinked. "Monster core blood jade? How did you get this thing? Could it be that Mu Yan is related to the demon race?" Mu Yan couldn't help but sneer. "Li Weiran, you don't recognize this piece of jade, and you have the nerve to pretend to be Xiaobao's biological father? Do you believe that I won't chop you up and feed you to the dogs right now?" Li Weiran blinked innocently. "I don't know what you're talking about." Bang! Mu Yan punches him in the head. The originally incomparably handsome youth's left eye immediately had a bruise, making him look particularly funny. Not only was Li Weiran not angry after being hit, he even laughed softly. That smile was even happier than when he was about to succeed in his scheme against Di Mingju. "I didn't see it clearly just now. Why don't you bring the jade closer, so I can take a look again?" Mayan expressionlessly looks at the man whose skin is as thick as a city wall. The corner of her mouth slowly hooks up into a sinister and callous curve. "Do you really want to pretend to be Xiaobao's biological father?" Li Weiran glanced at Di Mingju, the smile on his face becoming even more radiant. "How can you say it's an impersonation? I've always been one." Mu Yan sneered. "Then do you know what I wanted to do the first time I saw Xiaobao's biological father?" Li Weiran's clear blue glass-like eyes revealed some curiosity. "What do you want to do?" Mu Yan flips her wrist, and a dagger flickering with cold light appears in her hand. 7 Brilliants had just found the dagger. Because of the spirit Darren's mysophobia, There is very little junk in the Tian Emochin's space. The dagger's attributes were quite good, so 7 Brilliants had reluctantly kept it. Now it finally came in handy. Mu Yan laid the dagger horizontally, expressionlessly pointing it at a certain spot on Li Weiran's body. Slowly she said, "Of course, castrate him." The atmosphere in the room instantly became eerily silent. Mu Yan doesn't notice that Di Mingju, who is behind her, is quivering all over. His gaze then landed on her, his gaze gentle and helpless. Li Weiran, on the other hand, couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Jun Mayan, why are you so interesting? I've never seen a girl like you in my life." The young man lying on the ice-cold iron bed was clearly in a sorry state, extremely weak, and his body was completely confined. But the smile on his face is bright and dazzling. A pair of ice-blue eyes quietly stare at Mayan, as if he's staring at the whole world. "Jun Mayan, I'll give you a piece of advice. Marrying Di Mingju and becoming the holy empress of the polar domain will only smooth out your edges and corners and ruin your life. You will regret it in the future." Di Mingju's gaze darkens and he's about to act. But Mu Yan is already one step ahead of him, once again punching out. This punch is condensed with spiritual power. Apart from smashing Li Weiran's right eye black, his whole body is also knocked unconscious. Chapter 3600. Don't look at how Li Weiran is lying on the bed, seemingly unrestrained. In fact, his Dantian spiritual veins have been completely bound by Mu Yan's Shin musician skill, prison drawing. Add to that the array in the prison, and third brother's dragon-trapping curse. Li Weiran's current strength is lower than a mortal's. Therefore, Mu Yan only used a little bit of strength to knock him out. The two of them leave the underground prison. Along the way, Di Mingju is in a trance, his gaze sweeping over the jade in Mu Yan's hand several times. Mu Yan thinks that he's still brooding over not killing Li Weiran. So she grabs his hand and puts the jade in his palm. "This jade was left to me by my biological father, Jun Shiyuan. But that year, I met that cave, and I lost this jade." As soon as the jade is in his hand, Di Mingju's body can't help but tremble slightly. Too familiar. He had worn this piece of jade close to his body for 5 or 6 years. He doesn't know where this jade came from. But when he woke up one day, the jade appeared by his side. The magic core jade seed will show its true nature in the hands of other people. But in other people's hands, it's just the most ordinary and unremarkable jade. As the emperor of the polar domain, Di Mingju has seen all kinds of treasures. Such an ordinary jade, logically speaking, should be thrown away without hesitation. But somehow, Di Mingju feels that this jade has an inseparable relationship with him. He kept this jade by his side, wearing it close to him for 5 or 6 years. Only now does he know that this jade was left behind by Mu Yan. That year in the nameless cave in the Yinwu continent, he and Mu Yan had skin to skin, and also Xiaobao. There has never been another man, no biological father of Xiaobao, whom Mu Yan deeply loved. From the beginning to the end, it's always him. Mu Yan belongs to him alone. From the beginning to the end, only him alone. Di Mingju realizes this in hindsight. His heart is surging like a stormy sea. Ecstasy, happiness, and guilt fill his mind. Di Mingju. A clear and sweet voice with doubt and worry rings in his ears. Di Mingju suddenly reaches out and tightly hugs the girl in front of him. "Yin Yan, I'm sorry?" The man's hoarse voice carried a lot of affection, a lot of guilt and regret. "I'm sorry, I forgot everything that happened. I'm sorry for letting you suffer so much alone all these years. I'm sorry. As your husband and Xiaobao's father, I couldn't shelter you from the wind and rain." Mu Yan stares blankly for a moment, then she inwardly curses. Oh no! Di Mingju wouldn't really be angry, right? Otherwise, why would he say such nonsense to apologize to her? Di Mingju, listen to me. I really don't like Xiaobao's biological father. No, not to mention liking him. I hate him more than enough. Back then, I was still a minor, yet he dared to lay his hands on a minor. If he wasn't a beast, then what was he? Do you think I would fall in love with a beast? Di Mingju. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he let go of the person in his arms. He said with difficulty, "Actually, you don't have to hate him. Maybe he just couldn't control himself, and like you too much. Mayan looks at him suspiciously. Chapter 3601. Mayan puts on a straight face and coldly says, "That heartless and ungrateful beast doesn't have a fart of deep love. If he really liked her, how could he eat and wipe it clean, patting his butt and disappearing without a trace?" An arrow piercing through the heart. Demingju opens his mouth, but he can't say half a word. Mayan remembers the experience of her past life, and her face also turns cold. That person simply doesn't understand what kind of disaster he left behind for himself. Getting pregnant out of wedlock, suffering all kinds of rumors and slanders, these are nothing. But how many people would covet a small, defenseless, immortal spirit body? And the ending of her past life also proves this point. Xiaobao wasn't even born, yet he was cut out of her abdomen and refined into an elixir. So, how could she not hate him? Everything that happened in that cave back then had too many accidents arising from a combination of factors. And then there's the fuzzy memory. Mayan doesn't resent her own experience. But what about Xiaobao? Why was he so irresponsibly brought into the world, and then abandoned like a pair of worn-out shoes, suffering all those sufferings? Mayan reaches out to hug Demingju, and snuggles her whole body into his embrace. "Yin, I don't want to mention this person again. Let's never mention him again, okay?" Demingju's heart feels like it's been tossed in a pan of oil over and over again. He wants to tell the truth, but seeing the pain and indifference in Mayan's eyes, he swallows back the words that are on the tip of his tongue. "Okay." He hears himself respond in a hoarse voice. "If this is what Yin wants." "Junshang, so you're here." Elder Chang, who had just turned around, sees the two embracing in the courtyard. He immediately runs over happily, not even bothering to spoil the scene and disturb the lovey-dovey couple. "Junshang, this subordinate has something to report to you," Elder Chang excitedly says. "Little master, he awakened the Li Fire bloodline." Demingju stares blankly. Li Fire bloodline? His mind suddenly remembers the Li Fire Day mark that appeared on his forehead at that time. Elder Chang once said that it was a direct descendant of the polar domain who had awakened the Li Fire bloodline. At that time, how could Demingju have thought that the one who awakened the Li Fire bloodline was unexpectedly Xiaobao, his Demingju's son? Elder Chang sees that Demingju's entire body is in a daze. He anxiously says again, "Jun, that's the Li Fire bloodline, just like you." Demingju's heart suddenly jumps, and he hurriedly interrupts him. "Ben Jun will go see Xiaobao." Mayan asks doubtfully, "The same as Demingju? Demingju also has the Li Fire bloodline?" Elder Chang said, "Of course. The Li Fire bloodline is." Jun Shangdaren's heart is flustered. His face was still taut as he pretended to inadvertently interrupt Elder Chang's words. Even in the Xiaoxian continent, the Li Fire bloodline is an extremely rare bloodline that can be inherited. The polar domain is one of them. Xiaobao has awakened his Li Fire bloodline. I'll watch over him. He'll be fine. Hearing this, Mu Yan is simply overjoyed. As for whether it could protect the awakening of the Li Fire bloodline from different bloodlines, Mu Yan subconsciously ignores it. After all, the ancient book was vague and it was quite old. It's normal for the description to be incomplete. Since Demingju said that he can protect Xiaobao, then he can certainly protect him. Elder Chang, on the other hand, is completely stupefied. What's going on? What does he mean by the Li Fire bloodline is an extremely rare bloodline that can be inherited even in the Xiaoxian continent? What does he mean by the polar domain is one of them? Chapter 3602. The Li Fire bloodline was clearly the sole inheritance of the Mo clan's direct line of descent. There was no other, alright? However, just as Elder Chang was about to speak, he received a warning look from the Emperor, and immediately shut his mouth obediently. He couldn't help but mutter in his mind, "What's going on with Jun Shang? After going to the Yinwu continent, has his brain been beaten to a pulp?" "Demingju, accompany Xiaobao. I'm going to refine some elixirs for you and Star Wolf to heal." Mu Yan touched Xiaobao's face, and saw that his brows were tightly knitted. His little face revealed a pained expression, and his eyes were filled with heartache and worry. But she can't help with the Li Fire bloodline's awakening. Rather than staying here, it's better to ask third brother for advice on how to completely remove the remaining curse from Di Mingju's body. Moreover, Xiaobao was still thinking about his father before he fell asleep. If he could open his eyes and see Di Mingju by his side, he would definitely be happy. Di Mingmo nodded and sat on the edge of the bed. Only when Mayan's figure disappears outside the door does his eyes dare to reveal his bitterly suppressed emotions. She held the boy's small, warm hand in her palm. For a moment, Di Mingju's mood is in turmoil. The voice that comes out of his mouth is almost hoarse and broken. Xiaobao, Daddy has come to see you. I'm sorry. It was Daddy's fault. I didn't take good care of you and Mommy. His child, the future successor of the polar domain. He was supposed to be high and mighty, living a luxurious life and enjoying limitless glory. But because of his forgetfulness and stupidity, he actually wandered about in this desolate world for so many years. Because he didn't have a father, he was mocked and looked down upon. And all of this is what he owes Xiaobao, what he owes Mayan. As if she had heard his call, Xiaobao's long eyelashes fluttered, and she opened her eyes. Seeing Di Mingju sitting on the edge of the bed and holding his hand, Xiaobao looks absent-minded. He softly calls out, Daddy. Di Mingju's throat is choked with emotion, almost unable to control his emotions. Father is here. Xiaobao blinked, and his eyes gradually became clear. He realized that he wasn't dreaming. He was really seeing his father. In an instant, an inexplicable sense of grievance and sadness welled up in his heart. Her long eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings, and bean-sized crystal tears rolled down from under her butterfly wings. Xiaobao choked and said, Daddy, I thought you didn't want Xiaobao anymore. For a moment, Di Mingju feels so distressed that he almost can't breathe. He clumsily stretched out his hand and gently wiped away the tears on his little face. With a gentle voice that he had never used before, he said, How could Daddy not want Xiaobao? But Lil Bao is sick. He feels terrible. Father came and then left. He didn't even take a look at Xiaobao. As Xiaobao spoke, he felt more and more wronged, and tears streamed down his face. Her small body was also trembling slightly because of her sobs. Because Xiaobao isn't Daddy's biological son, Daddy despises Xiaobao? Don't you want Xiaobao anymore? No. You are my son. You are my Di Mingju's only flesh and blood. Di Mingju cries out in his heart, but all the words are stuck in his throat. He felt his eyes getting a little wet. He had to suppress his surging emotions with great difficulty. He reaches out and picks up the boy on the bed, letting him lie in his arms. With the other hand, he gently wipes away the tears on the boy's face. In a hoarse voice he said, In Daddy's heart, you will always be my most important child, Daddy's most precious flesh and blood. Daddy can abandon everything in the world, but I will never abandon Xiaobao and Yangqin. Chapter 3603. His long eyelashes flutter gently. Because those big eyes have been washed by water, they appear even more translucent and bright, like the most beautiful gems in the world. Di Mingju continues. Daddy didn't come to see Xiaobao before, it was Daddy's fault. Xiaobao, forgive Daddy, okay? Xiaobao grabs Di Mingju's lapel, somewhat bashfully burying his whole face in Di Mingju's arms. His muffled voice comes with some excitement. Xiaobao doesn't blame Daddy. Yangqin said for Xiaobao to believe in Daddy, and Xiaobao has always believed. In Xiaobao's mind, Daddy is also the best daddy in the world, Xiaobao's only daddy. Di Mingju abruptly tightens his grip, tightly hugging the little person in his arms. He can no longer hold back the moisture in his eyes, almost blurring his vision. Xiaobao, Daddy will give the best of everything in the world to you and your Yangqin. I hope you can forgive me for the mistakes I've made. After speaking for a while, Xiaobao feels weak all over. He softly calls out Daddy, grabs Di Mingju's lapel, closes his eyes, and falls back into a deep sleep. The strange thing is that this time, he doesn't feel the same pain as before. Even in his sleep, he feels as if he's being roasted over a fire. This time, the temperature around him is still warm, but not scalding. It's like all the pain, the heat, and the torment are blocked outside by a powerful umbrella. Xiaobao knows that this is his daddy. So powerful, so perfect, so supreme. But he always gently shelters him, and his Enchanting from the wind and rain. He also says that he is his most important child, just like his own flesh and blood. His daddy is the best daddy in the world. In his sleep, the boy's mouth gently curls up, the wrinkles on his brows unfold, clearly having a sweet dream. The tall and handsome man's movements are clumsy, but careful as he holds the boy, like he's holding a treasure that has been lost and regained. Elder Chang, who has just entered the door, sees such a scene, and his whole person stares blankly. This is really too much like a real father and son. In fact, Di Mingju and Xiao Bao have always been very much like biological father and son. Di Mingju, who has always been cold and aloof, speaks bluntly to both women and children. In other words, due to his experiences since young, their emperor had always been unapproachable. However, it was one thing for such an emperor to show gentleness to Miss June. Even the children that Miss June had with another man were shown to be extremely patient and doted on. In fact, he didn't even hesitate to designate him as the successor of the polar domain. Back then, Elder Chang had found it unbelievable. He could only attribute it to the indescribable fate between people. But now that he thought about it, perhaps it wasn't fate at first sight. Instead, it was the fetters of blood. Could there really be such a miraculous coincidence? Elder Chang swallowed his saliva and asked in a low voice, "My lord, why did you lie to Miss June? The Li Fire bloodline is..." Di Mingju glances at him and fishes out the paper that Pajun left behind from his bosom, handing it to him. Elder Chang took a look at it, and his eyes widened. He was so shocked that he almost jumped up from the ground. "My lord Tita, this, is what Pajun said true?" Di Mingju makes a shushing gesture, coldly shooting him a look. Elder Chang immediately covers his mouth and cautiously glances at the sleeping Xiao Bao. Seeing that he didn't wake up the little master, he lets out a long sigh of relief. At this moment, Elder Chang's brain is also a lump of paste. Chapter 3604. Although he has already been warned by Di Mingju, he still can't suppress his excitement. He keeps pacing back and forth in the room. He mutters excitedly, "My polar domain has a true heir. Jun Shang is amazing. I'm going to be a grandfather. Ha ha ha." Di Mingju looks at his silly appearance. He disdains it at first, but then unconsciously curls up the corners of his lips. In fact, even if Xiao Bao isn't his biological son, he would still pass on the polar domain to him, and would also treat him like his own flesh and blood. But that kind of feeling is different. The fetters of blood are magical and wonderful. From now on, he doesn't have to worry about someone standing between him, Xiao Bao and Mu Yan, and snatching them away. Di Mingju has never cared about Mu Yan's past. He has set his mind on this woman, and he will love her without hesitation, for all eternity. Loveliness is a kind of one-for-one feeling. As long as you love deeply, there will inevitably be possessiveness, jealousy, worry about personal gains and losses, restlessness. Now that he knows that Mu Yan belongs to him alone from beginning to end, and that Xiao Bao is the crystallization of their love, all the jealousy and uneasiness have vanished into thin air. How can he not be ecstatic? However, after a moment of ecstasy, remembering Mu Yan's resentment towards Xiao Bao's biological father, Di Mingju's heart sinks. He told Elder Chang everything that had happened in the past few days. Elder Chang is simply dumbstruck, and only after a long while does he say, So Jun Shang, you really laid your hands on the underage Miss June? Most importantly, after you laid your hands on her, you still abandoned her?" Di Mingju's face darkens. Ben Jun doesn't remember. "Scumbag. Too scumbag." Elder Chang shakes his head and criticizes, "It's no wonder that Miss June hates you to the bone." Saying that, he also looks Di Mingju up and down. "Jun Shang, don't tell me that you also have your father's dissolute nature. Get lost." Elder Chang avoids Di Mingju's murderous gaze and coughs lightly. "But this matter can't be hidden forever, right? What if Miss June gets angrier the longer we hide it?" Di Mingju frowns, then coldly says, "Ben June will find an opportunity to tell Mu Yan about this matter. None of you are allowed to divulge it, especially information related to the Li Fire bloodline. Do you understand?" "Yes, my lord. When it comes to business, Elder Chang's attitude towards Di Mingju immediately becomes respectful. My lord, defeating armies' old woman seal has been triggered. Does that mean that he has fallen into a desperate situation? At the mention of defeating armies, Di Mingju's expression also turns grave. Pujuan's soul lamp hasn't been extinguished, which means that he's still alive. But the soul lamp is getting weaker and weaker. He lowers his head to look at Xiao Bao. Once Xiao Bao has endured the awakening of his Li Fire bloodline, Ben Jun will go to the Yinwu continent to investigate. Old man Chang nodded. Then this old man will stay on the floating island to look after Miss June and the young master. 2 days later, Xiao Bao completely endured the awakening of his Li Fire bloodline and became lively again. And his strength had also increased by leaps and bounds. Originally, he was the same as Luoyu at the beginning of the Earth Expansion Realm, but now he had leaped to the 6th level of the Earth Expansion Realm, which made Luoyu extremely depressed. In the entire Xiaorao sect, except for Yun Ruhan and Chu Moli, who were taken away by Yi Chengfeng, the others had reached the peak of the Earth Creation Realm. He was the only one who was still in the initial stages of the Earth Creation Realm, which was a serious hindrance to the Xiaoyao sect. Chapter 3605. That's why Luoyu had been practicing hard these days, completely unlike before when he would always find a chance to slack off. But he didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to advance a level even after practicing day and night. After sleeping for 3 days, Xiaobao directly jumped to the 6th level of the Earth Opening Realm, making him the bottom of the Xiaorao sect. He couldn't even compare to his little martial nephew, who was 6 or 7 years old. Seeing Luoyu hiding in the corner and planting mushrooms, everyone couldn't help but laugh. Xiaobao walked up like a little adult and touched Luoyu's head, comforting her coldly. 7th martial uncle, don't be sad. You're already very powerful. Oh. Luoyu looked at Xiaobao with tears in her eyes. Sure enough, his precious martial nephew was the most obedient and considerate. Unlike the others who only knew how to gloat from the sidelines. Who knew that Xiaobao's next words would be, worst comes to worst, after Nyangqin and the other martial uncles ascend to the Xiuxian continent, we'll come back to visit 7th martial uncle. Ow ow ow. Luoyu angrily grabbed Xiaobao into her arms and pinched his tender little face with all her might. Xiaobao, you've changed. You've been infected by your mother and have become so black-bellied. You're not cute at all. Xiaobao escaped from Luoyu's grasp and threw himself into Mu Yan's arms, making a face at Luoyu. Then he raised his small, tender thumb and slowly turned it back, making a "you're too weak" gesture. This was given to him by the Felling Evil sect. Luoyu had no love in life. Everyone burst into laughter. Mu Yan touched Xiaobao's head, her eyes full of gratification. She thought of Xiaobao who had just come out of the mountains. He was still so cold and distant, completely unlike a child of his age. But now that Xiaobao was growing up, because he was surrounded by love and warmth, plus Di Mingju made up for his father's shortcomings, he was slowly showing his childish side. Mu Yan's heart was full of gratification and pity. Her greatest wish in this life was to make Xiaobao happy, and then accompany him as he slowly grew up and became an indomitable spirit. Now this wish was being realized step by step. The people around her were also becoming more and more happy and perfect. Her wish was fulfilled in this life. Luoyu glared at Xiaobao, whose face was taut, but he was still gesturing with his thumb down. She was so angry that her teeth itched. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "Let's go. If you have the ability, let's fight on the training field. See if I don't beat you until you kneel down and beg martial uncle for mercy." Xiaobao's face was expressionless as he said in his childish voice, "We can compete, but 7th martial uncle can't cry when you lose." "Why would I cry?" Luoyu was so angry that she turned into a pufferfish. He gritted his teeth and said, Let's see who will cry first." Although he said that, he still glared at Mu Yan and the others. "You are not allowed to come over to watch the battle, to prevent you from secretly helping Xiaobao." Xiaobao also nodded. 7th martial uncle also wants his face. Even if he cries, he can't let others see it. "Hey, my bad temper." Luoyu grabbed Xiaobao's collar and carried him in her arms, heading towards the martial arts arena. Ha 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 ha. There was a roar of laughter in the courtyard. Even Mu Yan couldn't help but shake her head. But soon they couldn't laugh anymore. Boom! A loud noise came from the direction of the martial arts arena. Then innumerable black gas, as thick as ink, surged into the air and filled more than half of Liberty City. What happened? What is that black gas? Chapter 3606. Mu Yan's expression changed. Without thinking, he flew towards the martial arts practice field. Others might not know what the black energy was. But she knew. That was Li Weiran. How could this be? Li Weiran should have been trapped, and his ability to act was completely restricted. And the outermost restriction was personally reinforced by Di Mingju. Mu Yan didn't kill him mainly because the jade appeared in Liberty City for no reason, and was picked up by the Golden Crow Fire Essence. And this period of time was also when Li Weiran entered and left Liberty City. That person back then might not be Li Weiran, but what followed would be related to Li Weiran. Mu Yan wanted to get information about the true owner of the jade from him, so that Xiao Bao could successfully survive the next 2 Li Fire bloodline awakenings. But Li Weiran was seriously injured this time. Apart from waking up once, and being knocked unconscious by Mu Yan, he didn't wake up again. Plus, Di Mingju could protect Xiao Bao through the Li Fire bloodline awakening. So Mu Yan forgot about Li Weiran for a while. Who knew that this pervert still had the ability to cause trouble? Mu Yan was someone who could reach the top of the fortune list. Although his speed wasn't as fast as Ling Yusheng, he was still very fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived at the martial arts practice field. At this time, the martial arts practice field, which was originally paved with bluestone and set up with formations, was already broken beyond recognition. Luo Yu was clutching her chest, standing up from the ground with a pale face. Not far away, Elder Chang was also in a sorry state. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, his eyes full of anxiety. Seeing Mu Yan coming over, Luo Yu showed a guilty expression and said hoarsely, "I'm sorry, 6th senior sister. It's all because I was stubborn and insisted on competing with Xiao Bao. That's why he..." Mu Yan's face darkened as she said coldly, "Is it Li Weiran?" Luo Yu nodded. Cough, he took Xiao Bao and flew up the Heaven's End cliff. 6th senior sister, they must not have gone far. Let's go after them immediately. Maybe we can catch up. Mu Yan took out an elixir and stuffed it into Luo Yu's mouth. Her voice softened, but there was an undeniable determination. "This isn't your fault. I was careless. I didn't expect Li Weiran to be able to escape from the penalty prison. Since he wants to capture Xiao Bao, even without the competition between you and Xiao Bao, he would still be able to find an opportunity to hide in the shadows. You're injured, so it's better for you to recuperate here. Don't worry, I'll definitely bring Xiao Bao back." Luo Yu's nose twitched. She wanted to say something, but she nodded in the end. Elder Chang could not wait to catch up. "Miss June, let this old man go with you. If that bastard Li Weiran dares to harm little master, I will definitely tear him to pieces." Elder Chang was filled with regret and shame. He had clearly been guarding by the little master's side all along, but he had actually failed to do so. Li Weiran, who was already heavily injured, directly snatched her away. He really let down the little master, and even more let down Jun Shang's entrustment. Heaven's End cliff, inside a cave in the drunken evening forest. Little Bao pursed his lips tightly as he stared coldly and vigilantly at the white-clothed young man in front of him. The gears in his head spun quickly as he tried to figure out what his goal was and why he wanted to capture him. In the cave, the fire crackled as it burned. A plump, juicy hair was skewered on a stick over the fire and was being roasted continuously. There was a sizzling sound of oil. An enchanting fragrance permeated the entire cave. Gurgle. Little Bao suppressed the urge to swallow his saliva, but his little stomach rumbled uncontrollably. Chapter 3607. Li Weiran glanced at him and smirked. He tore off a rabbit leg and wrapped it in a large leaf before handing it to him. Xiao Bao couldn't help but swallow his saliva. However, he said stubbornly, "Why did you capture me? Why did you injure 7th Martial Uncle and Grandpa Chang?" Li Weiran said nonchalantly. I captured them if I wanted to and injured them if I wanted to. Do I need someone's approval? Xiaobao gritted his teeth and spat out 2 words, bastard. Li Weiran looked at his angry expression and couldn't help but laugh. So do you want to eat the meat roasted by the bastard? Xiaobao struggled internally for a moment, but he still took a bite with a cold expression. Delicious. It was comparable to Fifth Martial Uncle's cooking. No wonder Huang Huang couldn't forget it. However, Daddy's cooking was still better. Humph. After finishing the delicious, fat and tender rabbit leg, Xiaobao's stomach bulged, and he couldn't help but burp. Then, he couldn't help but glance at Li Weiran. The hand that had been corroded in order to save him had already recovered to its original state. Was it Nyangqin who helped him heal? Grandpa Chang told him that this person was a bastard who wanted to kill Daddy and hurt Mother. But why did this bastard have to save him time and time again? Even in the desert of the chaotic heaven cave abode, he was willing to sacrifice his life to save him. If that stinky toad's teeth were any closer, his hand wouldn't just be corroded, it would be bitten off. Xiaobao's beautiful eyebrows furrowed like a little adult. He felt that he should hate this bastard Li Weiran. Now that he was captured, he should fear and hate him even more. But he didn't seem to be afraid at all. Li Weiran turned back to look at him, and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, even if you keep staring at me, I won't let you go. Humph. Xiaobao turned his head coldly, expressing his disdain. But after a while, he couldn't help but ask, why did you harm my father and mother? Li Weiran used a branch to poke at the haystack, replying as if he was bored to death. Children won't understand adult matters. Xiaobao was so angry that she didn't want to talk to him again. Then, he heard Li Weiran's low and somewhat hazy voice. Because his mother killed my mother, and caused me to become like this. So, I want him to lose everything as well. I want him to taste every bit of pain that I went through. Xiaobao felt a little dizzy. It took him a while to understand that it was his father's mother, who killed Li Weiran's mother, making him an orphan and suffering a lot. That was why Li Weiran, who had grown up, wanted to take revenge on his father. Xiaobao thought about it in his own shoes. If someone killed his mother, he would be in so much pain that he would wish he was dead. She will restrain herself from tearing the person who harmed his mother into pieces. The cave quieted down. Li Weiran slowly chewed on the other rabbit leg. Seeing that the little guy's nose and eyes were cursed together, and his little face was taut, Zhang Wuji's heart skipped a beat. That appearance that was 70% similar to Mu Yan revealed a bit of cuteness and elegance at this moment. He couldn't help but chuckle softly. What? Don't you think I should take revenge on your father? Xiaobao pursed his lips and said after a long while, I don't know. But it's useless even if you want to take revenge. In any case, you can't beat father. Li Weiran. This little brat's eloquence has improved. Xiaobao continued. Father's mother did something wrong. But father didn't do anything wrong. Mother said that every grievance has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Father is also very innocent. Of course, you can take revenge on father, but I won't stand on your side. Chapter 3608. Li Weiran almost burst out laughing. Little fellow, do I need you to stand by my side? Xiaobao snorted and didn't say anything. Li Weiran lowered his eyelids slightly and said nonchalantly, I really can't beat your father, so I can only use you as a bargaining chip. Little fellow, if I use your life to threaten your father to hand over his own, do you think he will agree? Xiaobao glared at him fiercely. Shameless bastard. Li Weiran smiled and didn't bother with him anymore. He got up and found a corner to lie down and close his eyes. The cave became extremely quiet. Only the crackling sound of the burning fire could be heard. Xiaobao looked at the sleeping Li Weiran warily for a long time, before he tiptoed over. Under the light of the fire, the youth's face was as pale as snow. Even his lips were colorless. He was clearly an adult, but he was lying on his side and curled up. His frail body trembled slightly. Blood had seeped through his clothes. On his spotless white robe, there were startling red marks painted on it. Xiaobao's divine sense had already grabbed the Bixia sword in the air. But now, he hesitated and didn't pull it out. Li Weiran, this big bad guy, shameless bastard. Why did he look so pitiful now? At this moment, Li Weiran's chapped lips opened and closed slightly, letting out a muffled sound. Xiaobao couldn't hear it clearly, and couldn't help but move closer. Then, he heard a clear, yet sorrowful voice that belonged to a youth. Mother, I already have the ability to protect you. Why do you still want to abandon me? Let's not look for Debaxian, okay? Isn't it enough for us to depend on each other? Mother, I found the dark cloud spirit flower. We can both cultivate. I don't need to rely on others to protect you. Why won't you turn around to look at me? You hate my eyes, so I'll dig them out, okay? Mother, can you turn around and look at me? Xiaobao didn't really understand what Li Weiran was saying, but listening to this hoarse, broken, and almost desperate pleading voice, he felt a little sour in his heart. Li Weiran seemed really pitiful. His mother didn't like him. He didn't have a father to love him. For so many years, there was only one person. In comparison, Xiaobao was much happier. His mother had always doted on him. And now Xiaobao had a father. A family of 3 could be together forever. Xiaobao sighed softly. She looked at Li Weiran with pity in her big eyes. He took out a porcelain bottle and placed it beside Li Weiran. Then, he quietly turned around and left. He wanted to help his father get rid of the potential danger. But seeing how pitiful he was, she decided to let it go. Moreover, he had saved her before. The small figure disappeared into the cave. Li Weiran, who should have been sleeping soundly, slowly opened his eyes. He curled his lips slightly, picked up the porcelain bottle beside him, opened it and sniffed it. Then he couldn't help but laugh softly. But in an instant, that smile was replaced by a cold murderous aura. Li Fire bloodline, land of the cursed god. So that was how it was. It turns out that the little guy really is Di Mingju's own flesh and blood. No wonder he has a pair of ice blue pupils that are almost exactly the same as hers and Di Mingju's. It's no wonder that Di Mingju, who previously hated her to the bone and shouted to beat and kill her, suddenly doesn't even bother to pay attention to her. Chapter 3609. It seems that Di Mingju already knows about the little guy's past. Therefore, this impostor was no longer a thorn in his side. Di Mingju, you must be ecstatic that you have regained what you lost, right? It doesn't matter. You can be a little happier. Because only when you are truly filled with hope, when you fall from a high place, you will fall even more miserably. The pain will be even more heartbreaking. Watching your beloved flesh and blood die in front of you, without a corpse left. This kind of feeling of losing something that you have gained, and then being consigned to eternal damnation. You must savor it. Suddenly, a pair of childish clear, ice blue eyes flash in Li Weiran's mind. The hand holding the porcelain bottle tightens. He murmurs, "Little guy, don't blame me. You can only blame yourself for being Di Mingju's son." His voice is calm and gentle like a whisper. The expression on his face is as warm as usual and different. But the hand holding the bottle, the veins on the back of his hand bulge, as if he wants to crush something. And this scene, even he himself did not notice. Nyangqin, seeing Mayan hurriedly searching for her in the drunken evening forest. Xiaobao screams and throws himself into her arms. Mayan hugs him tightly, inspecting him from head to toe to make sure that he is not injured. Only then does she let out a sigh of relief. Xiaobao, what is going on? Where is Li Weiran? Xiaobao recounts how he was caught by Li Weiran, how he was injured and fell unconscious, and how he ran out. Mayan's face is full of suspicion. Would Li Weiran be so careless? Impossible. That perverted caution, craftiness, and unfathomable treachery is something that Mayan has seen on the way from the gravel hill. She does not believe that the person that Li Weiran caught with great difficulty would let Xiaobao escape just because he was injured and fell unconscious. Xiaobao brings Mayan to the cave. What makes Mayan speechless is that she actually found the unconscious Li Weiran in the cave. She is not as polite as Xiaobao. She directly kicks Li Weiran's abdomen, waking him up. "Speak, what do you want?" Looking at the sleepy youth looking at her with an innocent face, Mayan really wants to grab a stone and smash his face. Li Weiran's body was extremely weak. He leaned against the wall of the cave and said weakly, "It wasn't easy for me to escape, but I still feel angry. It didn't make sense for me to be locked up in a dark dungeon for a few days and nights, without even a single person to send me food. Therefore, when I saw the little fellow, I became bold and took him away to make you worry. Mu Yan sneers thrice. Damn pervert. Do you think that I will believe your lies that come out of your mouth? Li Weiran didn't seem to notice Mu Yan's expression as he continued. But I regret bringing the little fellow here. The little guy is Mayan's heart. You must be very sad that he's taken away. I have deep feelings for you. How could I bear to see Mayan sad? Thus, she simply pretended to be asleep and let him go. For the sake of my infatuation with you, Mu Yan, you definitely won't blame me, right? Mu Yan takes a deep breath. He repeated in his heart 3 times. Don't bother with the lunatic. She took Xiaobao's hand and turned around to leave. She doesn't even want to say half a word to him. Jun Mayan, aren't you going to catch me and bring me back? Li Weiran's voice comes from behind. Chapter 36:10. Mu Yan turns her head and sneers at him. Catch you? I don't think so highly of myself. You can come and go as you please in this heavily sealed prison. What would I catch you for? To let you kidnap my son again? Li Weiran can't help but laugh. This laugh pulls at his wounds, causing him to cough uncontrollably. Jun Mu Yan, how can you be so interesting? I've never liked a woman as much as I like you in my life. Mu Yan looks at him coldly, not saying a word, until Li Weiran withdraws his smile. She says faintly, Li Weiran, do you really like me? Do you really have feelings for me between a man and a woman? Li Weiran stares blankly, his brows subconsciously wrinkling. Mu Yan slowly says, when I gave you the dark cloud spirit flower, I discovered that Li Weiran, you're a person who lacks emotions. You don't understand love, and you don't know how to love someone. The 7 emotions and 6 desires are just symbols in your eyes, and they can't reach your heart. Li Weiran looks at her coldly, his eyes without a trace of warmth. Shut up. Mu Yan ignores him and continues. You treat me and Xiaobao very specially, saving our lives time and time again. You did all of this not to deliberately get close to us and use us as chess pieces to attack Di Mingju. It's also not because you really fell in love with me at first sight and wanted to be with me. It's because of a freak combination of factors. Because of the dark cloud spirit flower. You entrusted your mother's obsession, unwillingness, and feelings to me. You want me to accompany you, so that you don't have to be alone anymore. But that's not love. It's not even possessiveness. Li Weiran's eyes are slowly dyed red. He slowly stands up from the ground, saying word by word. I told you to shut up, did you hear me? Mu Yan sighs softly. Li Weiran, I don't know about the grudges between you and the polar domain and Di Mingju, and I won't interfere. If the polar domain really owes you, you can rely on your own ability to get it back. But you have your hatred, and I have my obsession. As long as I'm still alive, I will never allow you to hurt my man and child. That's all I have to say. Take care of yourself. Li Weiran gritted his teeth and looked at Mu Yan, who was about to leave. He said hoarsely, Jun Mu Yan, if you don't kill me today, you will regret it one day. Mu Yan smiled but didn't respond. She pulled Xiaobao and left the cave without hesitation. There was a clear and melodious voice in the distance. No matter what, thank you for saving Xiaobao so many times. Besides, Xiaobao likes you so much. Why would I kill you and make him sad? Mother, I didn't. Okay, no problem. Bang! Li Weiran fell on his, but on the wet and cold ground. His lips were pale, and his eyes were flickering. In the end, he closed his eyes and let out a desolate and hopeless laugh like a trapped beast. It had been 3 days since he returned from the drunken evening forest. Everything returned to normal. However, Little Treasure felt that there was something wrong with his body. In the dead of night, he woke up in the space. He sat up abruptly and covered his nose. 2 streams of blood flowed down from the tip of his nose. Drip! A drop fell on the fat rabbit's body, causing it to open its mung bean eyes in a daze. Its short tail was also swaying left and right. However, when it saw Little Bao's appearance clearly, its entire body suddenly shuddered, and it let out a sharp cry of rage and terror. Chapter 36:11. Young master, you're bleeding. This shout woke up everyone inside and outside the space. Little Phoenix, the evil warding sword, and Huang Huang cried out anxiously as they scurried around. Qi Huang frowned and pulled Xiaobao to the side. He sized him up from head to toe, and the suspicion in his eyes grew. Only the Golden Crow Fire Essence was watching the spectacle from the side. Serves you right. You guys bullied me back then, and now you're getting your retribution. Xiaobao wiped the blood off his face and said softly, Elder brother Qi Huang, don't worry. I'm fine, right? Maybe I've been cultivating too much recently, and am a little tired. Qi Huang instinctively replied in its Sundara manner. Who's worried about you? I just don't want to see you dirty my space. However, his brows furrowed even tighter. No matter how he looked at it, Xiaobao didn't seem to be injured at all. There were no unusual energy fluctuations either. Everything was as usual. But this was exactly what was strange. This was the third time Xiaobao had a nosebleed. How could a person keep having nosebleeds for no reason? There must be something strange going on. Qi Huang said with a cold face. Brat, did you randomly eat something and get poisoned? Xiaobao shook his head blankly. He couldn't help but think of the rabbit meat Li Weiran gave him in the cave 3 days ago. She clenched her fists tightly for a moment before quickly releasing them. Xiaobao grabbed Qi Huang's hand tightly and stammered. Big brother Qi Huang, can you not tell mother that I have a nosebleed again? I don't want mother to worry. Qi Huang raised his eyebrows and wanted to curse. Why should I help you keep it a secret? But when he met Xiaobao's big watery eyes, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. All right, I won't say anything if you don't want to. I'm not a blabbermouth. Humph. It wasn't because he was soft-hearted towards this little bastard that he agreed to it. Xiaobao warned a few more of the little ones, and even threatened the Golden Crow Fire Essence for a while. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. But when he lay down to sleep again, his small body still curled up uneasily. 2 days later, Zhou Zixuan ordered someone to deliver specially tailored winter clothes. Most of them were Little Treasure's clothes. It looked exquisite and cute, making Mayan simply unable to put it down. However, Little Treasure was a little absent-minded. The room was warm, and her face was flushed under the sunlight. She looked healthy and energetic. However, those originally sparkling and translucent ice blue eyes seemed to have lost their luster, becoming dim and silent. Xiaobao, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Mu Yan finally discovers that there's something wrong with him. Xiaobao forced a smile. Mother, I'm fine. It's just that there are too many clothes. I don't need them. Before he could finish his words, he felt something warm spurt from his nose. No, not only the nose but also the eyes, mouth, and ears. In an instant, the blood in his body seemed to be rapidly drained. His body also became cold and stiff. Xiaobao. Mayan is overwhelmed with shock as she hugs Xiaobao, who is slowly collapsing. Xiaobao, don't scare Niangqin. Xiaobao struggles to open his eyes and look at Mu Yan. His little hands use all the strength in his body to grab her clothes. Niangqin, am I going to die? You won't. Mu Yan says through gritted teeth. Don't talk nonsense. Xiaobao will live a long, happy and healthy life. Niangqin will absolutely not let you die. Xiaobao's eyelids tremble, and he finally couldn't bear it anymore. He completely falls into a coma. Chapter 36:12. Xiaobao's eyelids trembled, and he finally couldn't help but fall into a coma. His face, which was still red just a moment ago, is now as pale as rice paper. Qi Huang's incredulous voice comes to Mu Yan's ears. The immortal body has collapsed. How is this possible? He's not even 10 years old, and hasn't been infected by too much desolate air. How can the immortal body collapse so quickly? Xiaoyao City, in Chu Moli's room. Everyone from the Xiaoyao school is gathered at the side. Chu Moli retracts his divine sense from Xiaobao's body, and frowns slightly. Third senior brother, is Xiaobao under a curse? Mu Yan holds back her thoughts that are on the verge of collapse, and says each word with a trembling voice. Is this what Li Weiran meant when he said that if he doesn't kill him, he will regret it one day? The killing intent in Mu Yan's heart is rolling like a raging wave. If Li Weiran was in front of her right now, she would definitely not be able to stop herself from tearing him into pieces. Chu Moli gently shakes his head. I can't be sure. Meeting everyone's anxious and doubtful eyes, Chu Moli muttered to himself irresolutely for a moment, but still said, there are many types of curses. There are those that can entangle a person's 3 souls and 7 spirits like maggots in the bones. And there are also those that will completely dissipate after achieving their goal, not leaving behind the slightest trace. Some are specially used to achieve a certain function, and some can be used repeatedly, and their effects are not much different from ordinary talismans and formations. There are many kinds of them, and those kinds of curse that disappear instantly. Once they are completely hidden, I can't detect them. And because I don't know what kind of curse it is, I can't think of a way to deal with it. You can understand the forcible removal of curse as a method of fighting poison with poison. Only by clearly knowing the characteristics and purpose of the curse can one be able to deal with the problem. Otherwise, the effect of the curse will only be superimposed, and Xiao Bao will die even faster. Chu Moli's words make everyone's heart sink little by little. Mu Yan's heart seems to be soaked in regret and hatred, being cut into pieces, unable to calm down. She clearly knows what kind of a sinister and vicious pervert Li Weiran is. She actually let down her guard. If something really happened to Xiao Bao, Mu Yan suddenly stands up and walks out. Junior sister, where are you going? Mu Yan closed her eyes and said slowly, I will go find Li Weiran. Senior brothers, please help me look after Xiao Bao. We'll go with you. That's right, 6th senior sister. Let's go and force Li Weiran to tell us what curse he put on Lil Bao. At that time, 3rd senior brother will definitely be able to save Xiao Bao. Chu Moli knitted his brows, as if he wanted to say something. There were always some doubts in his heart, but he could not verify them. Chu Moli took another look at Xiao Bao on the bed, but didn't say anything in the end. However, just as Mu Yan is about to step out of the room, a familiar voice suddenly came from outside the house. Mu Yan, are you looking for me? Li Wei ran. Mu Yan kicks the door open. Chijua's sword was unsheathed and pressed against Li Weiran's throat. What did you do to Xiao Bao? Li Weiran's face was still pale. However, the smile on his face was as bright as the spring scenery. His voice was frivolous and melodious, making people want to chop him into minced meat. Didn't 3rd young Master Chu say it already? I put an instant elimination curse on the little guy. I counted with my fingers, and the time for the curse to take effect should be almost here. So I came to take a look. Mu Yan's eyes suddenly flashed with a strong killing intent. The Chijua sword in her hand fiercely stabbed towards Li Weiran's chest. Chapter 36:13. But before the tip of the sword could enter the flesh, it was caught by 2 slender fingers, unable to move an inch further. Li Weiran had a hint of mockery in his voice as he said with a smile that wasn't a smile. With just the few of you, you won't be my opponent. What about Di Mingju? His precious son is about to die. Doesn't he want to come and take a look? What curse did you cast on Xiao Bao? Luo, you said anxiously. You damn pervert. How did my 6th senior sister and Xiao Bao wrong you? Why are you so persistent, scheming against them again and again? Li Weiran's icy blue eyes were tinged with scarlet, dark and bottomless. They didn't wrong me. But who asked them to be the people Di Mingju cares about the most? I can't kill Di Mingju, so I can only let him lose everything, and make him wish he was dead. As soon as he finished, Li Weiran's fingers suddenly moved. The 7 absolute sword buzzed, shaking violently. After the cloud marrow bone, this sword almost wouldn't break. However, the natal sword was severely shaken, and Mu Yan still felt that her sea of consciousness was distorted in an instant. She was in so much pain that her face instantly turned pale. The next moment, a cold hand without the slightest bit of warmth clutched his throat. Li Weiran smiled shyly and gently. Killing Di Mingju's son doesn't seem to be enough to make him feel pain. Then I'll kill him as well. Without a fiancé and a precious son, I want to see if Di Mingju can still live like a normal person. Bang! Just as the cold fingers were about to squeeze Mu Yan's throat, Li Weiran's entire body suddenly flew backwards. Mu Yan, on the other hand, is embraced into a familiar embrace. The crackling sound of lightning filled the room. Li Weiran fell to the ground with a large hole in his abdomen, blood gushing out. Black-purple lightning jumped around his wound, burning every inch of his flesh. Even with Li Weiran's perseverance, his body was twitching violently from the pain. After struggling for a long time, he fell down, battered and exhausted. But there was no pain or fear on his face. Instead, he revealed an excited smile. Di Mingju, you're finally willing to show yourself? The person who came was Di Mingju. He rushed to save Mayan in the nick of time, only to feel a burst of palpitation and lingering fear. But just as he felt at ease, when he saw Xiaobao in critical condition, his heart suddenly sank to the bottom of an icy valley. Elder Chang rushed to Xiaobao's side, but the more he examined, the more he frowned. What was going on? Was he under a curse? But there was clearly no trace of the curse on Little Master's body. He wasn't poisoned or injured. How did Little Master become like this? Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. Immortal spirit body collapse. Elder Chang screamed and glared fiercely at Li Weiran. He gritted his teeth and said, "What method did you use to make Little Master's immortal physique collapse?" The smile on Li Weiran's face grew brighter. Those with the immortal physique are the lucky ones that even the gods are jealous of. As the saying goes, the heavens are jealous of heroic talents. Therefore there are gains and losses. The more powerful the talent, the more fatal the flaw. Do you want to know what method I used to make the immortal body collapse? Li Weiran crawled up from the ground and said slowly, "Hee, it's a pity that I don't want to tell you." Di Mingju grits his teeth and says, "What do you want? Polar domain? If you want it that much, Ben Jun will give it to you, as long as you let Xiaobao go." Chapter 36:14. Elder Chang said anxiously, "My lord." Ha 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 ha. Li Weiran couldn't help but laugh out loud. Di Beixian is such a playboy. How did he give birth to someone as infatuated as you? Who in the world would believe that the Polar Domain's sovereign lord would actually abandon the Polar Domain's 10,000 years of foundation for a woman and a child? Di Mingju's heart doesn't have the slightest ripple, only unspeakable distress and anxiety. He really didn't care about power, status, or a 10,000-year foundation. If he wanted the Polar Domain, he could recreate it. As long as he was still by her side, everything would return to him. But if he lost Mu Yan and Xiaobao, he would be a walking corpse for the rest of his life, and there would be no meaning in living on. Mayan grabs Di Mingju's hand, unable to stop the tears from falling from her eyes. Unconsciously, Di Mingju backhandedly grabs her tightly, as if he's afraid that she'll disappear. "Don't be afraid, I'm here," the man said in a low and husky voice. "I definitely won't let anything happen to you and Xiaobao." Mu Yan chuckled. She held him with one hand, and Xiaobao's ice-cold little hand with the other. With the man's words, she seemed to be really unafraid. At worst, wasn't it just death? No matter what, the three of them would not be separated. Li Weiran looked at this warm and harmonious scene, and felt that it was an eyesore. He slowly put away the smile on his face and said coldly, "Why can the son of that evil woman by Shengwei obtain happiness? Is the heavenly Tao really fair? If the heavenly Tao is unfair, then I will seek justice for myself." Di Mingju, you want to use the Polar Domain to exchange for your son's life? This seems like a good deal. He paused, and a malicious smile bloomed on his face again. "But I don't agree. Compared to obtaining the Polar Domain and watching it collapse and decline, the Polar Domain is much more valuable. I want to see Bai Xingwei's son lose his love forever and go crazy in pain." Di Mingju's eyes are bone-chilling. With a wave of his hand, the black lightning that was jumping around Li Weiran's abdomen suddenly converged into a black sword and flew out, creating a splash of blood. Following that, the black sword turned into a long rope and suddenly tied Li Weiran up tightly. The long rope was still covered in dark purple lightning. The moment the lightning touched Li Weiran's body, it caused his flesh and blood to explode inch by inch. In the blink of an eye, the white-robed youth had turned into a bloody mess. Di Mingju grits his teeth and says, "You want to die? It wasn't that easy. The various tortures of the Polar Domain, this lord disdains to use them. But today, if you don't say what kind of curse you used, this lord will help you cover it up one by one." Li Weiran had already fallen to the ground. Even his breathing seemed to have stopped for a moment. But he still wakes up and opens his eyes to look at Di Mingju, the high and mighty man who used to look down on him, as if he were an ant. He was obviously panicking now. No matter how hard he tried to suppress his feelings and hide his true emotions, Li Weiran could still see the deep fear and guilt in his eyes. Di Mingju is in great pain and despair, right? Because of her own son had fallen into such a hopeless situation. He wanted to save him, but he couldn't. He wanted to kill him, but he didn't dare to. It was as if he had sunk into hell and would never be able to escape. Today, I ask you to have a good taste of the pain and torture that I once suffered. In the years to come, this kind of pain and despair will accompany you, forever and ever, unable to escape. Chapter 36:15. At this time, Chu Moli suddenly said, "Tutor Mo, I have a way to make him speak." His gaze turned to Mu Yan. Junior sister's musician skill, floating like a dream, can make people fall into a dream and obtain the secrets they want to know. The corners of Chu Moli's lips curled up, and he turned to look at Li Weiran with a smile that was not a smile. With his current cultivation, little junior sister is naturally unable to let him enter your dreams. However, what if you first cripple Li Weiran's cultivation and bones? Of course, Li Weiran is dead for sure. After his cultivation dissipates, he won't live for more than a day. But one day is enough for junior sister to pry out the secrets we want from his illusions. Li Weiran's expression suddenly stiffened. He could no longer maintain his previous calmness and indifference. He stared at Li Weiran, his face instantly becoming sinister. "Chu Mo, Li, how dare you?" Chu Moli revealed a shy and gentle smile. He said slowly, "Don't look at me like you want to eat me alive. I'll have nightmares at night." Mu Yan felt that this method was very feasible. She stopped Di Mingju's actions and slowly walked forward. "Since I was the one who played, floating like a dream, then crippling his cultivation should be done by me. I don't care about the grudges between Li Weiran and the polar domain, but killing him today is a personal grudge between me and Li Weiran. It has nothing to do with the polar domain." Li Weiran's eyes were a little red. He stared at Mu Yan, who was walking forward, and gritted his teeth. "Jun Mu Yan, you can't kill me. I can die in the hands of anyone, but it can't be you." Mu Yan sneered. "From the moment you made a move against my son, you should have expected this day." As soon as she finished speaking, the 7 absolute swords were already stabbing towards Li Weiran's dantian. Li Weiran's pupils suddenly shrank. His face revealed a trace of vulnerability and confusion. Then, he laughed softly and slowly closed his eyes. "Heavenly law, how unfair you are. Why is it that even though we have the same bloodline, Di Mingju has everything in the world, but I have nothing? Even the only warmth and hope I've ever felt must be taken away." "Mother, don't." A low and tender voice suddenly rings out, interrupting Mayan's movements. Mayan pauses and turns to look at the bed. She saw that Xiaobao had opened his eyes at some point and was using all his strength to stop Mu Yan's movements. Little treasure. Mu Yan couldn't be bothered with Li Weiran anymore. She kept the 7 absolute swords and rushed to Xiaobao's side, hugging him in her arms. "Xiaobao, how are you?" Xiaobao shook his head, his voice weak but firm. "Mother, don't kill Uncle Weiran." "Why?" Before Mu Yan could say anything, Elder Chang was already shouting anxiously, "Little master, this scoundrel almost killed you. Why are you still calling him uncle?" Xiaobao's face was pale and his cracked lips opened and closed slightly. Mother said that Li Weiran is Daddy's younger brother, so he is Xiaobao's uncle and also Xiaobao's relative. Perhaps it was because they were family that she saved him time and time again, and even almost lost her own life. Because they were family, she clearly hated him at first, but later on, she didn't hate him at all. Elder Chang was flustered and exasperated. "Little master, you treat him as family, but he treats you as an enemy. Now that you have become like this and are in danger, it's all because of Li Weiran." "It's not like that." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.